Hello everyone, welcome to the stream. Nice to see you all here in chat. And today, I hope everything works. And today I have two special guests, not only one, but two. First of all, the one and only Clueless Fangirl, aka Helen.
Hello, everybody.
And of course, the one and only Red Book. First time here on the channel, Helen, you probably already know. And yeah, maybe tell us a bit about you, what you do on YouTube, and so on.
Yeah, let Steven start.
Yeah, aka Steve. Maybe I should add this.
Oh, hold on.
Yeah,
Oh, we have the sound issue.
Steven,
sound
you
is
can
always
mute.
a
I was
problem.
hearing you say hello about 80 times there, just echoing. But yeah, I'm Stephen. Prefer Stephen to Red Book, so you can call me that. And I started my channel back in May, and I know next to nothing about the TV show, so I hope I can contribute something today. I think Helen forced me to join this, so
an absolute ideal guest.
yes, I'll have next to nothing to contribute, but I know about Isildur, so hopefully I'll have something to say. But no, thanks for inviting me on. I'm happy to be here, even if it's about the TV show.
Yeah, pretty nice. I think we will talk much. Oh no, I wrote Isildur wrong. I made the same typo. Whatever, just ignore it. I guess we will talk a lot about the lore also in the background, not only about the show. So that should be totally fine. But yeah, there was recently a tweet by our friend, Fellowship of Fans, and he posted that Isildur will be in the main show. Maybe I can bring this up to the screen. Probably not, but oh no, I don't have it prepared.
Yeah, don't worry. We can talk maybe
Yeah,
a
just
bit about what we had, and you can do you want to see, Chris, if you can bring it up?
yeah, I try to bring it up in the background. I had it prepared somewhere.
Oh, well, Chris, like I want to, I'm German, as is Chris. Normally, we're way better at this. So, anyway, yeah. So we heard about the upcoming show, and that more and more plot leaks apparently get out. And we now hear that one of the main characters will be Isildur. And now everybody, in your head screams, Isildur, no. But yeah, so this comes as a surprise, I would say, because we always, not always, but a lot of us thought that the show, or at least the first season or the first seasons, might be around the time of the forging as the rings. Chris and I even talked about this a while ago. And it would make sense, to show, because this is the Lord of the Rings, right? Who the wider audience, the TV audience, was introduced to. And so the forging of the rings, cinematic wise, would make sense. This is basically the intro Galadriel gave us, So I think a lot of people would have loved to see how the rings were forged, who, introducing a character like Celebrimbor and all that. But now we're here. One of the main characters and one of the lead characters is Isildur. So that is way down the line. And the forging of the rings was in the year 1500. Isildur lived almost at the end of the Second Age, so 1,000 years later almost. So I think it's interesting if we now go into a dialogue and explore maybe the lore and the ideas behind it and what it would mean for the show and what we can see. So even Stephen, you're not that interested in the show. You know a lot about that time and the drowning of Numenor, which this will play into. So yeah, let's speculate, I'd say.
Well, it's not that I'm not interested. It's more I don't think there's been a lot of information that's come out, and it's quite.
Yeah.
I think the last big thing that came out was the image with the two trees in the background, which that's kind of caused confusion about when this show is taking place. But I thought it was maybe going to be like the Witcher,
Time jumps.
it jumps around, and I watched about 4 episodes of that and thought it was all happening in order. I had no idea that it was jumping around. I thought it could maybe show Sauron and the Rings, Celebrimbor, Eregion, and all that stuff, but also show the rise of Numenor, and then maybe
Yeah.
jump to the downfall and the Last Alliance as well. So I don't know if it's going to, each season will be one part of history, or if it's going to blend everything into one massive show. So I don't know if any information like that has come out. But, it could be possible. I don't think they're going to start with the downfall of Numenor, if that obviously happens way after the rings are forged. So I'd probably bet on it being something like that, where we're in different timelines at once. I don't know what you think about that.
Chris?
Oh, yes. I think, I don't know. It's kind of strange. I also thought about maybe they do like different perspectives in time, but not like just like some episodes just cover certain points in time and then jump around a bit. That would also be a possibility. But I would have been surprised. I agree with Redbook that I would have expected them to maybe focus on the classics, let's call them that way, like as you said, the forging of the rings, the stories around Numenor and so on, and its downfall. And now with Isildur, it's of course related to the downfall of Numenor. It's not like that, but still pretty late in the Second Age already, and there's so many other interesting stories in the background that I'm a bit surprised that they to see the name and hearing that it's potentially a main character, and from episode 3, I think it was said.
But we know the first 2 episodes will be a form of pilots, and I think the first 2 episodes. This is what I understand what Fellowship was saying. So the first 2 episodes will be pre whatever time, so most likely now end of the Second Age. So the first 2 episodes will be the backstory of all of this. This will be a prolonged prologue that Galadriel gave, just with apparently, Finrod or whoever it will be. So this will be most likely be the Undying Lands and the story of how the elves came to Numenor, introducing Sauron, blah 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 blah. So these will be the 2 first episodes, and then we make a big time jump, because this must be most likely the trees still look alive to me. So this are the years of the tree. So this is even before the First Age. So thousands of years before anything Isildur happens in the world, right? So these are the 2 first ones, and I think Fellowship even said they got a confirmation of crossing the Helcaraxa. They filmed scenes there, so that means Galadriel can be introduced, the hardship of the Noldorians coming from the Undying Lands to Middle-earth. And then episode 3, and this is why they say episode 3, when all this is covered, they will then introduce the main plot line, which is the Isildur story and time. Yeah. This is how I understood it.
Brought it up on the screen, the screenshot that was leaked. I think you were also on the stream when I did a live stream about that, right?
Yeah, we did. The 6-hour one.
The 6-hour one. It's surprising. Maybe it's hard to see on the stream, but it's in the background. You see the 2 glowing trees there. I still believe the city here must be Tirion, but I guess it can be still discussed. And there was also another leak which also fits Helen very well. That maybe I can bring this arrow up again. That I had that this person here might be a Finrod. It was also like something talked about, but you just mentioned it.
Yeah. It's not Galadriel, because everybody, we speculated, who can it be? I wanted it to be, who did I want it? Yeah, oh no, Glorfindel. I said, please make it Glorfindel, because he was robbed of his role. I don't know, I think you said Galadriel, right?
I really like the Glorfindel theory, but also Galadriel would make a lot of sense, and Celebrimbor would also make sense, though he would have dark hair. I made also a video about this and discussing a lot the what we find in the books about Tyrion and the Hiltuna, if there was a river or not, and that there was diamond glittering in the mountains, according to some sources, and stuff we don't see. And the tower there should be a light there set in the video. Maybe it's out of order right now, but if it's Tyrion, but there's simply not that much going on. I also found, let's get sidetracked a bit. If we look at this screenshot, it's probably production-wise very difficult for me to make it bigger currently. Could try, but can't promise. I think it's not that difficult at all. Okay.
You mean there were people in the...
No, the roofs there. I heard that often I heard that the roofs are golden, and as a result, it must be a Vinyamar. But I did not find a quote for golden roofs in Vinyamar, I think. I forgot already, to be honest. I did some research, I remember, back in the day, but can't remember the quotes out of my head currently. But I think it was not mentioned. It's good. Golden Gates. Please, sorry.
But isn't this why Gondolin, what Turgon later did, he copied this in Gondolin?
Yes.
Isn't that... Yeah.
Maybe there's a mention of Gondolin having golden roofs. I'm not sure.
I think streets, wasn't it streets?
Yeah, the streets are golden, and we can read that when Eärendil reached Aman, he went to Tyrion. Nobody was there because they were having a party, and on his clothes was diamond dust. I think something like this was mentioned, and the streets of Tyrion are described as golden there in this passage too. So there's that, but the roofs are not mentioned to be gold. Maybe that's just something fusing. I think even in Vanyamar there's a mention of silver roofs or something like this. I remember, but I can't remember where I read this. Maybe Redbook has quotes in his mind that can clear our confusion a bit here.
I don't remember quotes about golden roofs for Vanyamar. I think I remember gold in relation to Gondolin, but I've never thought that image looked like Gondolin, to be honest. It doesn't look.
No,
that's not the right place that would be. But no, I don't know about Vanyamar being. If I would expect a place to have golden roofs, it would be that. But I don't remember a quote specifically stating that it did have it. But there's obviously going to be some sort of creative choices.
Yeah, that's probably they did not went to that much detail, but just in theory, like even the light, if it's Tyrion, the light is missing, and I think I'm not sure, was it for Vinyamar or was it for or Vanyamar or was it for Tyrion? There's also a mention of bells, I think, somewhere, but I also forgot about that, to be honest. I maybe have to just look up my script because I made a video, I think, about it, but that could probably take a moment to get my mind back into what I wrote there a few weeks ago or months. I don't know, even sure. When did the screenshot came out? I forgot. Like I said, I'm lost in time.
2 months ago or something. Did you have a theory, Stephen, on who the person is, or where you? Because we kind of know it is Finrod. It's kind of confirmed. Was that someone you thought of, Stephen? Does that excite you to see Finrod for 2 episodes?
Finrod. I didn't think Finrod would make an appearance at all on the show based on when it was set to take place. But so that never crossed my mind. But I always thought it was Galadriel, because I thought, she's known to everyone who's either read Tolkien or only watched adaptations. She's such a kind of larger than life figure in Tolkien that I thought the first thing they're going to release maybe something involving Galadriel, so everyone would know who she was. But I think the idea that it's Finrod's is that actually that's completely confirmed.
Yeah.
I know that they said it was a sibling, but it's probably going to be Finrod, isn't it?
Yeah.
But
Yeah, it's very likely. Fellowship of Friends has some good sources there, and he is relatively reliable. Of course, maybe like you always have to think about what do you call it in English. In German, it's stille Post. You know what I mean?
It's not silent post. Yeah, it's like
It is
whisper.
correctly
Yeah,
the telephone game or
yeah, something
Chinese
like
whispers,
Oh,
whisper
yeah,
down the
we
lane,
call it,
something like this.
yeah, Chinese whispers, we call it. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay, yeah. Then sorry for yeah.
The German one
Sometimes
would be
vocabulary will
silent
miss.
post.
It's
I was about to Google the
silent
German
mail
name.
or whatever you want to call it in German.
But yeah,
Maybe somebody told somebody something, and then at the point when our colleague got the information, there is a
No,
core
he
of
gets
truth to it, but maybe there is something mixed up. That is totally possible. So I would still put it into the realm of a rumor, but a pretty solid
probably
one. Let's
going to
put it
be,
that
yeah.
way.
Because I thought it was Galadriel first, and then people started saying Sauron in like
Mm.
a fair form, which I didn't really go for that, but that would have been really interesting. And then Glorfindel would be great. Of course, it was
Yeah.
basically saying I had no idea that it would be Finrod, but I think if they handle him well, it would be really cool to see. I think.
Yeah, and he is the connector, he's the missing link to the humanity thing, because then you can, like connect the humans and the elves pretty early on, because he's that factor, and he connects Sauron to the elves and Galadriel and her, later on having this prominent role in the movies we already know, because he's her eldest brother, he's the kind of heir to the line of Finrod, right? And yeah, and he is the one who gets killed by Sauron. So Sauron basically kills Galadriel's brother, and then later on, you even get she's not just angry at Sauron for other reasons. He basically, killed her brother in the tower he actually built. So that is very, it's an intriguing plot. She's not just talking about some random evil that's out there in the world. No, she's fighting an evil that killed her brother.
Do you think they'll go into if they're involving Finrod here? Do you think they're actually going to involve his death and the Isle of Werewolves and that sort of detail? Do you think they would like that? Would have to start involving Beren and Luthien and all this. So,
I don't know, Chris, do you think they have the rights to tell these stories? That is always the question, right?
To be honest, in the right situation, I have no clue by now. Originally, when I don't know, I remember this trailer that came out like last year with Tom Shippey still in it, he gave an interview somewhere.
No. The German Tolkien Society. He gave that interview to the
German Tolkien Society, right? And he said something. If I remember it correctly, please correct me if I'm wrong. That he said something along those lines that they have to focus on the Second Age, but if they need to explain something for the story, they can maybe in a flashback show something from the First Age and so on. And that is all I basically know. But to my knowledge, I talked with Fellowship of Friends at some point too. I think I was he and me were guests at Nerd of the Rings, and then we had a discussion not on stream but off stream, and he talked about that they renegotiated. I think you also talked with Corey Olsen, right? And he also said something along those lines that they okay, this word is hard. Renegotiated the terms, the rights for it. Maybe they can now show more stuff. I don't know though. I'm a bit confused by all of this.
Yeah, but it makes sense from a writing point of view, right? So they started this show by obviously, writing a framework, a script, but then you see there's so many plot holes, but you need to fill in a few of these holes because people would be like, what, why? I want an explanation for this, and this. And they can't go against canon, so they can't make up completely everything, so they need some explanations. And I do this is just me, I don't know this, I don't, it's not like anybody told me this is just me thinking logically, coming from this industry. I would say it makes sense that then they went back, negotiated, we need this and this and this, to make it make sense, because they had Chippy and these people as advisors on the show, and he must have told them, or even the person writing the script must be like, okay, I need to explain this and this, and they must have had a list or something like that. And I think they went back and bought a few more rides. And I think Tolkien Estate must have, they don't want a show out there that goes against their canon and that doesn't make sense. They want, they want to sell their books still, and they still want, Tolkien to, like people to talk about Tolkien. And so then let that show have the truth, right? And not have to make up 75% of the content because they don't have this and this and this right. Rather give them more rights. So the show is most likely truthful and not, just half truth. That would be what I would do, but I don't know.
Would there not be a loophole where Beren, for example, Beren and Luthien are mentioned in The Lord of the Rings and the Appendices, and they're in
The
Unfinished
song
Tales.
he's mentioned, isn't he?
Yeah, so it's like, if they're mentioned in those stories that they have the rights to, would that not mean they could still use them, even though it's a story that's in Silmarillion that they don't have rights to? So would they not still get away with doing it?
Yeah. I'm not a lawyer. I have no idea. But it would make sense, they went back and put some additional rights. So the show is truthful to the source material, or most, like at least more truthful than making up.
But you're right, because if they're not allowed to change the canon, if you're saying that, then they'd have to make something up to explain other things. So
yeah,
it does make sense.
yeah. Yeah, but it would be cool to, because, I'm a fast age, and, the ages before the fast age stand. So I'm happy. And I do think what we had, and again, not confirmed, this is all allegedly, but they want spin-offs, right? Bezos didn't buy this for all this money without the thought of, look, this is what Game of Thrones is doing right now, right? They saw how successful that is. They planted the seed with the Song of Ice and Fire, Game of Thrones stuff, but now they're expanding the universe. They want to, bless you, they want to create a whole universe like Marvel and Star Wars did. And I do think we will have spin-offs of this. So maybe the First Age one day will come, or maybe, more of Finrod and his story will come. But I do think this will be an introduction, and I think this is why this is Isildur, because Isildur is a human. It's easier to identify with a human in a show and to tell Numenor is, the human side of the Second Age. And you don't go to a region where it's just elves. So I think I think it's a wise choice, actually, to start off with something very human-centric, and then elves and dwarves and all that as side characters, but not boom in your face First Age, high fantasy, dragons, balrogs, and all that. I think that would be too much for a casual viewer.
Well, I have the feeling though that I don't know, with like there's just so much story from. If we return to the picture here, where was it? Let me just do the production here really fast. With this picture here, starting Years of the Trees. The person there probably has a swords or weapons, so that hints at the end of the Years of the Trees. But and then the time span to the Second Age, to the time span to the end of the Second Age. There's so much story and stuff. I think maybe it's they could also easily do themselves a disservice by jumping around so much, and this could get confusing. Even though everything makes totally sense, but it's like a long story, like really. A long story, and I don't know. It's I'm really surprised by this, to be honest.
I thought with Isildur, if this leak is saying he's a main character, I've never considered him to be a a main character in the actual downfall. You know, our Palantir dies and Pharazôn, you know, seizes the throne, and it's more Amandil and
Yeah.
Elendil and the Faithful and all of that. Isildur seems to be more a main character when you reach Middle Earth. So I still don't know if this means that they're going to focus a time period that's already when Numenor has fallen. I don't know what you'd think about that.
Mm. So maybe let's for the viewers, maybe let's recap some sorry, I'm taking over, Chris, but I think this
No
is
problem.
like interesting. So I think because the times are interesting, you know, these people were Numenorean, so they didn't live just 50 years. So they were, this is plays into what Stephen just said, and I do think it is important to know, you know, what time this is, because yes, his father and his grandfather are important. His grandfather actually, you know, was the one sailing to the undying lands, right? And I think it will start so during the time of the of Tar-Palantir, which was basically the last, you know, faithful king, and then it went completely downhill with Pharazôn. And Tar-Palantir took over in the year 3177, and Numenor drowned 3324 or something like that. Or 19. I don't really remember. Maybe somebody has that date. But so there is a time span of a few hundred years, right? So I think they will, because I think Tar-Palantir is such an interesting and fascinating character. And Amandil, so Isildur's grandfather, Elendil's father, is also a very interesting person. And, you know, Elendil then becomes the protagonist of Ar-Pharazôn. It's not Isildur. This is what Stephen said, you know, because it is, isn't it said that Elendil and Ar-Pharazôn actually grew up together and were friends once?
Yeah, true.
So I think this might be, you know, where the show starts, you know, to show, this is very Game of Thronesy, by the way, this, you know, this whole time just before the drowning. And this is also the time then Ar-Pharazôn then later catches Sauron, who in 50 years, or not even 50 years, I think 49 years, he catches him and he becomes from prisoner to advisor. So this is just literally 250 years of time, but you have all these great characters, Amandil, Elendil. You can tell the story of the first, you know, human again tried to sail to the undying lands, never was seen again. Where did he go? This is actually a really cool plot. Then the story of Elendil, and then Ar-Pharazôn usurping the throne. This is such a hard word, usurping the throne. And I think this is, you can fill 3 years, 4 years of show with this, can't you? I think.
No, that's when I heard about the show being Second Age focused. I thought it was going to be late Second Age political intrigue kind of show, rather than a War of the Ring spectacle. I thought it was going to be because you can't do huge battles and everything every episode. It's going to be a lot of betrayals and all this kind of stuff, and that's definitely downfall of Numenor territory. And I also read that Sauron may not appear in it for a while, so again, it's all quite confusing. I know he's right at the end of the downfall, really, but there's plenty, like you said, there's plenty of room there for this battle between the faithful and the unfaithful, and the kind of degradation of the race of men in Numenor. I think there's, if they do it right, it could be good. But I thought from the beginning that's what the focus of the show would be, and it would maybe carry over to Middle Earth later. But I'd be surprised if this wasn't what the show was focused on.
Because the question is what happens in Eriador. This was why I was kind of convinced we will see Celebrimbor, because if they show this and they don't make time jumps 1,500 years earlier, and because Celebrimbor died, then he's already dead 1,500 years ago. He died when this show now apparently takes place. And you said, you know, like, richer time jumps, but that was just a few years. That wasn't like 1,500
Yeah,
years.
exactly.
So basically, everyone except the elves, everyone is dead if you do a time jump. You have nobody to relate to except Sauron and the elves. Everybody is dead if you tell the story, if you make a time jump all the time and go back to the forging of the rings. I think they will do that. I did explain, what Sauron did to the elves, and it kind of worked, but then it didn't work, and then he tried this again, strive and dividing people and dividing people's heart and dividing nations is how Sauron wins, right? He doesn't win just with battles. This is his malice, this is his cunning, this is what he's good at. And this is what he did in Numenor again, and what he tried 1,500 years earlier. So I don't know. I mean, I wanted to see the forging of the rings because this is like the coolest time. I'm a bit sad that we now won't see that
They
as a
have
main plot line.
they have to do that. I really don't see how they can involve
Not do it.
Sauron as some antagonist and not have even if they do what some shows do, where there's like a main timeline and then there's episodes in between main episodes that are set at another time. There's shows that do that, where it could be this is an episode focused on Anatar and Eregion, that kind of thing, or extended flashbacks. But I don't think they'll just reference rings being forged and not show it or describe it in some detail. I think they're missing out on a lot of Sauron's motives and the reason why he acts as he does. If they leave that out the show, I don't see how they could get away with doing that. To be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah,
The thing is, we don't know what were hobbits and what were dwarves. What were dwarves doing at the time of Ar-Pharazôn? We don't know anything, right?
No, there's an interesting a little gap in the dwarven lines. I think we don't even know exactly when which Durin lived.
Yeah.
Like I think, which one was it? Was it the third or the fourth that died? Not died, but it was around at the time. Got one of the rings of power potentially by Celebrimbor. I think it's the third, right?
Yeah, the third.
And yeah, that's a huge gap in between. Like for everything else, we have like a lot of like you can follow the Aragorn's ancestors back to the first age, but for the dwarves that's not really the case. I tried to look if there were what dwarven kings were known during the second age, and I think I did not find that much information about this. So you're right, there might be some gap. They start, of course, kicking in again when the third age starts, and even, I mean, of course, the war of elves and Sauron is of course a case where we know, okay, the dwarves also attacked the rear of Sauron, so Elrond, for example, could escape and so on. The fight or the battle with Sauron and so on. And so they of course did some things here and there, but you are right. There's not much information about them, and on paper, I mean, if you have to write a show and need maybe for some certain story elements a lot of freedom, then here you have a lot of freedom. We know that the dwarves are around, and we simply don't know what they were doing all the time. Probably doing dwarf stuff in the mountains, but it's kind of interesting, and I know it's I agree with what Redbook just said, with what Stephen just said, that I think one of the biggest story in the second age, or not the biggest, but one of the biggest stories, is definitely the forging of the rings of power and the One Ring. And thinking about the problem that you also mentioned, that elves live, of course, a very long time, as we know, but humans have a very limited time span. So if you have these long jumps, suddenly the protagonist, if it's one of men, is suddenly dead for thousands of years. It can easily happen depending how much you skip in time. And I think the conflict in Eregion happens in a relatively short time. So I always thought they would maybe focus on that because they don't have to replace so many characters just dying to age, if that makes sense. But yeah, now they running with Isildur, which I guess also works. Like, thinking of it, it's not that much that we know. What we know, the story that Isildur again steals a sapling from the garden, almost dies in Numenor, and then we kind of know what's going on in the background. We have this Amandil sails to the west, and then the others basically prepare leaving already if he's not returning in time, and then they have to leave. Then we have the end of Numenor, and then they found and then the Dunedain kingdoms in exile are founded, and then we are relatively fast at the end of the Second Age, with the War of the Last Alliance and Sauron's defeat there. And that is also, if you think about it, relatively many events happen in this short amount of time, this few 100 years. I'm not sure how many that are. I can't calculate this in my head this fast.
So
like 120 years or something, it should be, from the downfall of Numenor to the War of the... Maybe I'm doing my maths wrong here, but roundabout. And that is... Maybe that works because you have a lot of events and you also have a great story. But...
but
you also can fit men into it.
Yeah, but you can't set up Numenor as the main kingdom and then let it drown end of season 1. That doesn't make any sense. And then say, okay, now we're in Middle Earth. That would be... But what I do think is that they will... I mean, that would be just epic, if they end whenever this show is ending after, I think, 6 seasons or 5? 5, I think. So when the show is ending, it's basically, it goes hand in hand. It starts with the story of the Lord of the Rings. So the War of the Last Alliance, Galadriel basically telling the story of the War of the Last Alliance, or Isildur, cutting the ring off or something, or refusing. Maybe it ends with Isildur refusing to throw the ring, into Mount Doom or whatever. That would be cool, if it ends there. But you can't have Numenor. Please don't drown. Please don't give us Numenor and then drown it. End of season 1. I wouldn't like that.
That would be strange. But do you remember when the show was announced? Like, I don't know when. In my mind, it's like 10 years ago or something. Yeah.
It's not 10.
It was 4 years ago.
Like I said, I have no feeling for time. Could be 10, could be 3 years. That was, I remember making this video about a young Aragorn, and that was like the line of it. So maybe they are saying, okay, we start at the end of the Second Age and then go to the Third Age, because this is also Appendices territory and, of course, a bit of unfinished tales. And it might be also a possibility. I mean, deep in my heart, I would have loved if they would have started at the very interesting beginning of the Second Age. I'm currently still working on my second part of my Elrond video, which will cover the Second Age, and I did a lot of research into the Second Age stuff, and it's so fascinating what all that happens in this early time. Here in chat, one of my faithful community members, Andres, said, on Discord, she said that that probably means we won't see Celebrimbor that much, and but at least we will get Gil-galad, she wrote in chat like a while ago, and that's like this a story between Numenor and Gil-galad, and the shadow lurking in the far east, and Gil-galad foreseeing this. Maybe with the help of his advisors, Círdan and Elrond. That's my opinion. Also, a very interesting story, especially the conflict between Numenor and men in this time is very interesting. And I thought that is so unknown to a lot of people, I think, and overlooked maybe, because it's just like very basically outlined information or story that we have about this. But that would be interesting to tell. I always thought they would go for this, but now... I'm 3,000 years off, I guess. So
apparently.
Do you not think with... Sorry. Go ahead.
Stephen and I did a fun stream exactly on that. Stephen and I did a stream on Aldarion and Erendis. So it's basically that time,
Yeah.
you know, when they wrote the letter, when Gil-galad wrote the letter to Aldarion's father. Oh God, help me out. What was his father? Whatever his father's name was. I think he was the fourth.
Tarmineldil?
Meneldur, yeah. So
Meneldur.
and Stephen and I talked about this time, you know, being it in a way the first strife, you know, father and son really had arguments and fought with each other. Then husband and wife, you know, like well, in the end resented each other till she killed herself, and all these bad things happened in Numenor. So it would be an interesting time. But sorry, Stephen, I interrupted you.
Oh, that's fine. Just wondered what you thought about. I know everyone complains about politics getting involved in this show, and I don't want to bring the chat down, but I always thought with Numenor you would have an opportunity to show the negative side of them in Middle Earth, the colonization of Middle Earth, the places in Middle Earth that don't like the Numenorians. I thought based on the way shows are made now, that would be some sort of focus as well. I don't know if you would agree on that. It's not just going to be about the kind of glory of Numenor. There's an opportunity there to show their kind of dark side as well in Middle Earth.
Yeah,
I agree.
You know, how they chopped down the woods and stuff like that, you know, and they became from.
And basically pushed out the Edain that are from the house of Harles, I think, originally, and they became later the Dunelandings, and some became later the Bree-land, the people from Bree, and so on. It's an interesting story, and as you say, there's also like potentially conflict down in Umbar, where they also took this place and settled there, and my quote is not on point today, but there's like a mention that they also took all the treasures from there, or something, not treasures, but something like this is mentioned somewhere. So this, of course, leads also to conflict if just an invading force comes from this Numenor island and just they are so powerful you can't do much against them. They just colonize this region, put place their settlement, and then taking out resources and treasures from all the region. Nobody can basically fight against them because they are so powerful. It's really interesting, or a conflict story, a really conflict-loaded story. And as you say, it's very interesting to maybe see this darker side. It's not just the glory of the Numenorians being the good ones and so on. There's some interesting nuances to the story if you look closer to it, as you mentioned. It's really interesting.
Do you think that would mean they would try and have some sympathy for the people of Umbar and maybe Far Harad and these kind of places? You think instead of the way they might appear to people who've watched the movies, they just seem like the non-white bad guys from far lands? There's actually an opportunity to have some sympathy for places that have either been corrupted by Sauron or overwhelmed by the power of Numenor. I think there's a good opportunity to explore that kind of thing there. And stop saying Tolkien's racist, you know, that kind of thing.
Yes.
Yeah, that's definitely a great opportunity. Let me just bring up the map here, because I have things prepared. Awesome.
Ooh, Chris, I'm impressed.
Yeah, I don't have a text prepared. Adding text is really difficult on the fly, I have to admit. But where the arrow is, there's Umbar, And
it could also be what Stephen just said, you know, it could also set up this thing later on, which Isildur is known for, because the Stone of Erech, which he brings, probably mispronouncing this, Chris is like having a heart. Erech? Oh, okay, good. No heart attack. So, you know, there was the man of the mountains who later became the Oathbreakers. This is a very similar concept, you know, to
Mhm.
why were they? I think this is a bit, more like they were cowards, but then again, Sauron influenced them. But how could Sauron influence the people later on? Because the Númenóreans didn't treat them really well in the beginning, or from mid Second Age onwards, they became from teachers to masters and basically, like slavers, or however you want to call it. But as Stephen said, this is the bad side of colonization, and it could later explain maybe why, they were like, okay, maybe we rather play with this guy Sauron here, and they later become the Oathbreakers.
Yeah, definitely a
Yeah.
possibility too.
Mm.
Oh, sorry, I just did not want to interrupt you.
I was fine. I'm just going to agree. It's like they're said to worship Sauron, and I think it's just referred to as the Dark Years. So it's all quite mysterious, and there's a lot of opportunity to uh, explore sympathetic characters instead of just assuming they're evil because they
Yeah,
serve Sauron.
yeah.
There's so much more to it. It's supposed to show the the cunning of Sauron, the strength that he holds, instead of just uh, they're all bad as well. There has to be some sort of corruption that takes place there.
Mhm. Yeah, because it's very, like Star Wars. Like I always, I'm the biggest Star Wars fan, and the thing is, evil there is not always evil. You have somebody like Thrawn, right? He's one of my favorite characters, and yes, he works for the Emperor, but he has reasons for it, right? And this is for many soldiers. Tolkien was a soldier, right? Like how do you know you fight on the good side? You basically fought for your country. Sometimes you fought for the reason of, that guy is feeding your family. So but then you found yourself on the wrong side of history, but you didn't think that while you were fighting. And this is, a very, this whole who's evil are the men, the Dunlendings. Were they really evil? What happened with the Rohirrim? This is very, yes, they are portrayed later on as, the evil guys, but are they really? Like, how would you feel if somebody comes and inhabits your lands because it was given to
Yeah.
you by a king who's not your king, who just proclaimed himself king, who came later on? You were there. You've always been there. This is a very, I like this topic, but then do I really want to become super political, super politically correct, woke, whatever people are calling it these days? No, not really. But I would still like if they, if they, because these topics exist, and I think they were important for Tolkien as well. Losing your home, fighting, all these things was important for Tolkien. Yeah.
Yeah, because even with the Dunlendings, it's the same thing we're talking about with Umbar. It's with Saruman
Yeah.
taking
Yeah.
advantage of the kind of hate between these realms, and
Yeah.
that's the kind of purpose it serves. So I think maybe not political or woke or anything like that, because it's speaking of how these evil figures take advantage of that, and the seeds of hate and all this kind of stuff. So I think it's I don't know if the show will get that deep, but um, like I said, you're wanting to be hopeful that it's going to have a bit of depth to it, and I think this is the kind of stuff I would really like, where it's not just going to show Sauron as a guy in armor attacking everyone. It'd be good to give a bit of backstory about his own motives. That's what I'd like to see anyway.
Yeah, for sure. Sauron is a very complex character. And I mean, I don't know, it's complicated, I guess, as always. If we come back to Umbar, I mean, it's also an interesting place geographically. If you look at this, it's very far away. Like a lot of different cultures live that, just not through the Second Age, but especially through the Third Age. When we have basically the borders of Gondor being closed. Sometimes Gondor even expanded down to Umbar, and we have the people from Harad, and we have we have Numenor there, and then later the Black Numenorians there. I mean, if I always imagined this harbor city as, I don't know, like a melting place of many cultures and
Yeah.
many things going on. I think if you go down that route, then that's probably the place for it, I guess.
Mhm.
And I'm not sure if there at the time of Isildur it is much mentioned anymore. I'm not sure about that. Probably. Not sure. Do you know something like mentioned in the books? I think only.
Start this. I think it's around. When is it? After the downfall, Numenor still held Umbar. It was, I think, somewhere Tolkien even mentions it's kind of like a third realm in exile. It's not officially one.
Yeah.
It's there's that's when you start getting Black Numenorians, the end of the Second Age, and this strife starts between Gondor, well, the south of Gondor, and Rad and Umbar. But then that really starts taking hold in the Third Age. But
Yeah.
I think it's when Numenor does fall and the realms are set up in Middle Earth, I'm pretty certain that the Umbar is still considered under Numenorian control at that time.
Yeah. The whole Black Numenorian, the Kingsmen, I think, just exiled there, right? That could have also hit at the time of Isildur, so it could hit and it could play a role at this time if the story would evolve around Isildur's lifespan. It's just my thought on this. But yeah, it's kind of hard to say. I mean, as said, it's an interesting place that has just a lot of opportunity. Sadly, I don't have a good artwork of Umbar, else I would show it here. So we have to live with a map. But it's, in my opinion, really fascinating place. Always, just like, I don't know, it's kind of cool. Would like to see Umbar in the show. And
I think they will. It's not going to be just in Numenor, like the Isle itself. Even we know that they've already gone east into the main continent, and like we keep saying, it'd be a missed opportunity if they're not focusing on these kinds of areas that have been missing from other adaptations. They surely have to be. You were saying it's like a melting pot of all the cultures and all that. It's I think Umbar definitely will be making an appearance, but what do I know?
And you can get, Black Numenorians there. I don't know. Sorry, I was busy in the chat. But you can get Black Numenorians there, and yeah, you can widen, the world, not just Numenor and maybe the Undying Lands, but you can widen the world and explain, who are Sauron's allies and where did they come from and how did it happen? The wars and South Gondor. You can explain what is South Gondor. Live there. I think it's cool. I'm here for that.
yeah,
And maybe we get a Nazgul that, I mean, you never know. Camul
Yeah,
obviously
not
is an
even mentioned that.
Easterling. I mean, this is why I'm here for, people. I just want to talk about Hot Sauron and Nazgul, but apparently this is not about the forging of the rings and turning the Nazgul now. Because maybe that's another interesting point. They first appeared 750 years after the forging of the rings of the nine. So 1,200, oh my God, I'm so bad in math. 1,500 plus 750 is 1,225-ish, something like that. They appeared first, right? Oh, sorry. My cat is drinking my tea. Bloody cat. My cat just drank my tea. Oh no. Anyway, sorry.
Well, in the meantime, I just found it out. 2,251 Nazgul first appeared.
Yeah.
51. Okay, yeah. So, see, this is also very close. I mean, they could appear earlier. This is just Tolkien tells us
Yeah, that's true.
this date. But this is very close, so they must be 9 already at that time. This is how the line, appeals to me. This is what I read into this line. So they must have been turned at this point. So 750. So he basically has 750 years in between the forging of the rings, handing them out, turning. Because it's not like he gave them the ring and then they become Nazgul, right? That's not the case. And so we could see, the beginning of the Nazgul, and I do think Harad could be, a place where we can get somebody like Kamul 2.0.
Yeah,
I would bet on
that's
it actually.
With the Nazgul as well, even though he says 2251 is when they first appeared, I've never suspected that. Like he talks about them falling to their based on their will in the beginning, if it was good or evil. Their strength of will would determine how quickly they would fade and become wraiths. I've never suspected that it happened for all 9 at the same time.
No,
Some of them might have become wraiths far earlier, and other ones were later, but then they just appeared at that time. So
yeah, they first appeared this time. That's all that's said in the Appendix B.
Yeah.
There's opportunity there for some quite evil figures, antagonists in the show who, I'm guessing they're going to. I don't know if they have permission, but they may create characters that would become ring race. I wouldn't like that, but I think they would probably do something like that if they've got the rights to use the Nazgul. They might invent a kind of backstory for several figures, and that's where Harad and Umbar would come into that. I think maybe Numenor. They might go that route with a fallen Lord of Numenor or something like that.
But we know 3 of the 9 are definitely Numenorians, right?
Yeah, but that's. I don't know if we talked about that, didn't we? On your when people always tell me that, they say, but 3 were Numenorians. I say, yeah, but people in Umbar and Harad were considered Numenorian. Like they'd already settled over there, so it doesn't mean they're from the Isle. But I think they'll do it anyway in the show. I think that will happen.
Yeah.
Or someone on the Isle will probably be someone who carries a ring or something like that. Because I don't know how, of course, they're going to go, but I suspect they would write something like that.
Well, 9 people is quite a lot, right? I mean, it's not like there were that many kingdoms. There were a few kingdoms of elves, but there were not that many kingdoms of men, during those 750 years, because it's not like in the Third Age. They've already been turned in the Third Age. So the kingdoms of men were not, I mean, they were not all kings, right? That is definitely not the case.
It says they became kings and sorcerers and that. So it's I've always suspected that it's maybe, well, this is all complete fiction, but this idea that someone could have been gifted the ring and then usurped their way to a position of power using it. That,
of course,
that kind of thing, rather than it being a king that was given the ring of power. I think that sounds kind of better, but.
I mean, my theory is still that either Kiryatan or Atanamir, maybe Minastir, but I don't think Minastir. I think Kiryatan or Atanamir is the Witch King, and maybe, Helen will be proved right in the show. Shut up,
really
Stephen. You know it's
not.
true.
Terrible theory, that one, but.
I tried, Chris, seriously, I tried to convince Stephen of this, but he was like, nope, nope, no.
It just doesn't work. I'm not accepting it. But
oh my god.
I think like I just said, if they made one of those figures Witch King, I think that's quite possible that they would do that. Like that theory floats around, and we've probably talked about who the Nazgul could be, and who knows, they might go that route of Tolkien didn't say who they were, so we're not going against them by creating these characters that would fill in the gaps,
I'm just checking. I made a post a long time ago about this whole Witch King thing in my comments somewhere. Just checking what I wrote there, so I remember what's going on. Sadly, I did not post the quote. I think if they are the king thing, I think is either not often mentioned, not much mentioned, or sometimes it gets confused. I think it's not clear if Carmel was an Easterling king or just a lord of the Easterlings. But yeah, it's a complicated topic. It was just absorbed in thought for a moment. It's a complicated topic, and maybe for another stream to discuss the origin of the Nazgul,
Yes.
because it's just I don't know. There are many theories. I don't think there's. I think we simply don't know. There are just too many unknown factors to really build a good theory, in my opinion. Just really,
No,
really.
and sometimes, and this is the magic of Tolkien, you know, this is not to explain everything, to leave some room for imagination, right? I don't want to
That is
know
true.
how magic exactly works in Tolkien's world. I don't want to know that, because then, and this is why the books are still relevant till today, because he didn't explain everything. This is what makes it still relevant and modern. If he would have said, this is the formula for, you know, whatever, this is the Witch King, this is, then people wouldn't still speculate about it, right? If you explain everything, then, you know, it's, if you don't read it for the 15th time, because it's boring, because you already know everything. And I think this is the magic of Tolkien, not to explain everything, and I hope the show understands that you don't need to give everything a backstory. But I do think for a lot of casual viewers, you need to explain a few things, because this is, you know, we mentioned The Witcher before, and I read those damn books like years and years. I have one of my best friends, she's Polish, and she said, oh my God, you know, you love fantasy, you need to read these books. She obviously read them in the OG language, in Polish, and she said, you know, read the German translation is really good, read them. And I understood the show, but I was still a bit confused about the timelines. But then just imagine, like, I know a lot of people who saw it and were like, what are these elves? Like, I don't understand. Like, I think you need to explain a little bit, because you don't have any character except Galadriel and Elrond. You don't have any character, you know, okay, Isildur, you know, now apparently, but he showed up for like a second. So
Everybody,
you don't,
Círdan.
no, oh my God, you're okay, good.
In the prologue, there's also Gil-galad.
True, yeah, you're right. We had a phase.
Círdan
But
didn't have a beard, did he? They didn't give Círdan a beard.
Yeah,
Should
they
have a
forgot
beard.
the beard.
that's a shame.
They've ruined it.
Oh, didn't we learn in the history of Middle? No, not the history. That
The
new
nature.
book.
The
from-
nature of
we have
Middle-earth.
Nature. So yeah, so no,
Yeah,
no
There's a good
beards
chapter
for
about beards.
Memorians.
Not
Yeah,
to
but-
go off course about nature Middle Earth, but if it says in the Lord of the Rings that it has a beard, I'd probably trust that over a note in nature of Middle Earth.
That is
Same.
true.
Yeah.
Just to what you're saying there, sorry, Helen, I just wanted to ask you if you're talking about the magic, the mystery not being explained, which I completely agree with. I always say that. But do you not think if they then go into detail about forging of the rings, they're going to explain something that's really vague, that's never been explained? Like if we're actually seeing how the rings were made and details like that, do you not think that kind of ruins the magic a little bit? Like how are they going to show something like that happening when it's really kind of mythological? You're not really meant to understand how these rings were made. Do you think that would ruin it somewhat by showing it in this TV show?
Well, the thing is, I don't want them to, because I do think the last lines of the ring verse, right, is definitely what Sauron said, right? I think this is kind of proven. I think the first part of the ring verse is Elvish lore, and then the last is, you know, what Sauron basically used as part of the spell he used.
Yeah, like a
So
binding spell thing, yeah.
exactly. So one ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them in the lands of Mordor where the shadows lie. I think the last one, in the lands of Mordor where the shadows lie, is not Sauron, but the two thingies is really Sauron speaking, and I think this is what he used. And I do think that this is my headcanon, and I do think this is what Celebrimbor heard, because it is said they heard in their minds what Sauron was doing, and this is when they took off the rings, right? I mean, that different versions, but this is how I understood it, and I just want them to show me who are the protagonists, because you and I know this, but most of the viewers don't know who's Celebrimbor, who's the Gwaith Amirdain. Why was it so easy for Sauron to convince elves to forge bloody magic rings? Like, what, huh? And not everything, but I want them to explain that the One Ring was bound to Barad-dûr, for example, and this is why they couldn't take down Barad-dûr. I want these little thingies to be connected.
Yeah, that would make sense because I'm kind of wondering, like, if it's for casual audiences. I don't mean that in an insulting way, but people who are probably never going to read Tolkien. How much can you explain about the motives of the elves
Yeah.
and how Sauron used that against them? This whole preservation of Middle Earth, their immortality, being bound to the world, and all this. It's like, do they go into that scale?
Yeah.
How are they going to explain how elves were received? It's have to kind of go into that detail to do that.
Yeah.
I don't think they will.
No, because then you have Galadriel, because Galadriel, they must portray her as she always was the one, right from the beginning. She saw through Feanor, and she sees through his last living descendant, Celebrimbor. This is a really interesting fact, right? So she wasn't betrayed. Gil-galad wasn't betrayed, right? So there were elves who weren't betrayed. Why was bloody Celebrimbor, from the line of Feanor? How could Sauron sway and persuade these elves, because they were Noldor, right? They wanted to craft.
Curious.
They were, yeah.
They have that curiosity of Feanor to, as soon as if he's coming to them with knowledge that they don't have. I've always thought Celebrimbor would jump at the chance, to try and maybe match Feanor and that kind of thing.
And funny enough, I'm just writing a video. It will drop on Wednesday where I try to explain how Sauron could do that, because the rings originally were actually Sauron thought them out to give out to the elves. They were never made for men and dwarves. That was just later on he gave them out to them. The rings were made to enslave the elves. That was his original thought. So just imagine Celebrimbor doing the deed for Sauron, creating what would lead to his own downfall. This is it's very perverted if you think of it. Yeah,
I think so. That's the kind of thing that'd be great to see covered. I'm just wondering how they would do that. It just seems like it's wishful thinking to go into that kind of depth. Even though it'd be great if they did, but I keep thinking they're going to really simplify it, and that kind of nuance will be lost. But I'm a book snob, as you keep saying, so I don't know if it's going to go further than I think it will go in the show. But we've not seen anything yet, so we don't know what kind of depth this show is going to go into. But I'd love it if they were covering all this kind of stuff with the perversion of these rings of power. That'd be great, in my opinion.
Yeah, but maybe now we won't get that if they Isildur.
Exactly.
That might be a possibility. It's really interesting how there's not much known, but there's actually some dialogue even with between Anatar and Celebrimbor and the Gwaith Myrdain, and basically, I don't know. He says, maybe you can read it because I have it in my in the second part of my Elrond video. I just opened the script and tried to find it, and I found it. Alas for the weakness of the great, for a mighty king is Gil-galad, and wise in all law is Master Elrond, and yet they will not aid me in my labors. Can it be that they do not desire to see other lands become as blissful as their own? that is from the Silmarillion, I think, and he basically tries to he praises, of course, Gil-galad and Elrond and how fair their land is and how great they are, but basically he comes over this little devilish thing he does there, but maybe they don't want your realm to become this fair. Maybe and he just places a little seed of distrust between them, and that is where he can land the point. And in a way, of course, Celebrimbor also, as a Noldor elf, if we think of Gondolin, like the Valar, one of the, let's call them high angels, Ulmo, said to Turgon, that he should, at some point he has to abandon his city, and then Tuor came to him and said, hey, you have to abandon your city now, and he said, well, maybe I just want, and my his nephew said, maybe just stay in the city, we can defend it. And then it led to the downfall of Gondolin. And it's in the same way, Celebrimbor maybe makes a similar mistake, which I find very, very fascinating. And in another way, it is fascinating that he also, what I like about Celebrimbor a lot is that he sees his mistake and at least tries to hide his rings from Sauron, and with success, at least 3 of them. And that, I think, makes a small difference. He sees his mistake. He seeks then, we can read in several versions that he seeks counsel with Galadriel and so on. And then
and he gives the rings away.
Hides the rings. He gives the rings away.
And
it's also interesting.
Yeah,
it's also interesting that they also they wanted to destroy the rings, but they could not find the strength. Something among those lines. There's a quote. It's really, really interesting what's going on there in the background.
But this is like what Melkor did centuries ago. Sauron basically copies his master there, like seeding this mistrust, because this is what Melkor did with Fëanor and his brothers. This is exactly the same, right?
Yes.
And so Sauron does the same, and he finds the right person in Celebrimbor, because I think most of the others would have,
and also the others, his Gwaith y Myrdain, it's only basically Galadriel, and Sauron knew that she would be his primary foe here in this what do you call it, a battle of deceiving, or whatever you want to call it. And she looked not far enough through him, but enough to not trust him, and then she left, and then the way was cleared basically for his evil plan. It's a really fascinating story, and we talked about it like, I don't know, 20 minutes ago or something, where Stephen said it would be a really missed opportunity to not show this exact conflict. Because I think there's just so much in it and so interesting. If you look really, it's not like it's really fleshed out, and you have to piece your puzzle pieces together a bit to get to this understanding, but it's definitely there, and it's really cool, and you could stay really close to the books, which would be awesome. But I don't know. Now with Isildur, as you said, we probably won't get this. It's just, it's really surprising, I think. I would not have, if you asked me 3 years ago that Isildur would be the main plot, I would not have guessed that. Of course, maybe in the later season we will see Isildur and what he's doing, but not starting with it seems kind of strange. But we talked about this already.
Do you think that if we're talking about Isildur being a main character, do you think we're going to have an Arion as well?
That would
quite
be cool.
Strange to just have one.
Yeah.
He's not been mentioned, but I thought one of these other actors might be him, or are they going to do the Peter Jackson thing and pretend he doesn't exist again?
Well, interestingly, in the films, I don't know why that is, but there is 1 or 2 scenes where he is mentioned. Interestingly, I think there is a scene when Denethor II brings Faramir with some men out to the graves and the pyre there, and I think he says something like, I'm from the line of, or no, I'm not sure how he phrases it, but he refers to Anarion and his line being the lords of Gondor, and that something like this never happened or would not have been foreseen, something like this. It's interesting that he's mentioned, but even they changed the statues,
That's right. To
yeah,
Elendil,
the
but
Agonars, and
Yeah.
there's also Elendil and Isildur instead of Anarion and Isildur. It's kind of strange that
I'd
he's
read
still
that.
mentioned, but they changed why. I don't know.
I'd read years ago that they'd mentioned him a few times and then he never appeared, and they thought this is quite funny. They thought it'd be confusing, even though we've got all these other names. But they thought mentioning a brother of Isildur would confuse audiences, so he's not a part of the story, so they just take him out. It ends up being about Aragorn being a descendant of Isildur instead. So it's they don't need to mention Aragorn at all. It's more about his kind of struggle with what Isildur had done in the keeping the ring and all that kind of thing. So I don't agree with it. I understand why they did it, but it's just strange if this ends up happening again. If he doesn't appear, I'm like, what do they have against Anarion? But I don't
But
know.
he died. Did he die in the War of the Last Alliance or before?
Yes, he got
A stone, like
a
a
stone
rock.
hit him, I think,
Yeah.
from Barad-dûr. There
That's
is
right.
it's a very buried detail. I don't remember where I read
Remember
this.
that. Okay.
There is a mention I'm not sure if it's in the Appendices itself or if it's just Unfinished Tales, a mention there about it somewhere. But there is a mention that he was slain by a stone or killed by a stone that fell on him during the siege of Barad-dûr. So at the very end of the last of this war.
Okay. Because it was like
in the siege
12
time.
years. The war was 12 years. I think also the movies depicted this as, like a few days, but it was literally 12 years, that war.
I mean, if you only, the story alone of the prologue of the Lord of the Rings films is just insane.
Yeah.
Like originally there was no prologue planned at all, but you need this exposition, and then it should be like 40 seconds or so at the beginning. They had to negotiate. Peter Jackson had to negotiate with the producers to get longer and longer, and I think it's now. At the end, he managed to make it like 7 minutes. But if you think about what everything that happens there in this time before, it's just so much story. It's like I really find it impressive how much information they put in this little thing. They had to make a few changes, but considering the circumstances, it's really impressive that they managed to do this at all. I think the film really needs it. And it would be cool if now for we talked a bit at the beginning of the stream that this let me just bring it up again because we still have it here. The picture here that this might be also a prologue, even though getting from this point in the story to Isildur, I think
Yeah, but it would be cool if her brother would have the prologue and then lead to her, crossing the Helcarax, or them together, crossing, with Fingolfin's host, crossing the Helcarax. I think that's cool. I mean, I would like if it would be her again, but then it's not Kate Blanchett, so maybe that was the decision, if it's not the same actress, maybe it would be weird to have Morfydd Clark voicing a prologue, and now you introduce another character, because it's good that it's an elf telling this story, because the elves, know the whole story of the world because they've basically been there from the beginning of days. So it's nice, and they write most of the lore, right? I mean, Bilbo basically just translates, but the base of all of this is elvish. Most of it is elvish lore, right? And elvish history. But it's nice that an elf voices,
That's why I thought it would be Galadriel, because I thought you could have these time jumps like you're talking about it, but the whole time Galadriel could know about it.
She was always there.
She's telling you, that's why I thought that's who that would be.
Yeah.
But maybe she is telling you the story. This is just like one scene from like the backstory,
She's basically let me think. Yeah, the only character I can think of right now that connects from the events from the years of the trees to the end of the third age and fourth age.
Yeah, because
I think it's
Círdan
only
wasn't in the Undying Land. He was probably one
exactly.
of the OG elves, but he wasn't in the Undying Land. So she's.
Yeah.
I mean, I'm not saying it, but I'm saying it. There's always Glorfindel, but he was
True.
dead for a while, and then he came back. But he was also there. So yeah, so it's her and Glorfindel actually. And I mean, apparently, I didn't know this. Somebody told me, I didn't know this, but he dies then, that Celebrimbor apparently was born in Aman. I didn't know that. I never thought about it because obviously Gil-galad is younger. He was born in Middle-earth. But apparently, did you know that he was born, or am I
Yes.
misinformed?
Celebrimbor was born in. Oh, sorry.
That means he came with his father, so he came with Fëanor. So he was on the ships. So he did kinslaying.
Yeah, potentially.
Ugh. Okay, but I've
This
never
is-
thought about it because if Finrod tells this story, they must mention, because if they show Galadriel and him and the host of Fingolfin crossing the Helcaraxe, right, which they showed Fellowship of Fans had material of them crossing icy wastelands and having fights with cave trolls in ice and whatnot. So that means they need to explain what happened to the other guys that reached Middle-earth. So Lebrimbo will be set up as a baddie.
No, small correction. Benjamin Hammond said it in chat. No, he did not take the oath of Fëanor, and I think he did not participate in the kinslaying. He distanced himself from what the others did. Same with the wife of Fëanor. But
yeah, but she stayed behind.
She stayed behind. He went with them though. But yeah, it's yes.
But he must have been there. So he just stood on the sidelines while his father and his uncles and his grandfather killed Teleri. He just stood.
Oh,
I
this,
don't,
it,
sorry, I don't
Tolkien
believe
said
him.
that about Galadriel as well when he kept on rewriting her as a saint-like figure that he went along but didn't do anything evil. So Tolkien seems to do that
But
with
he
some of
wrote
these
her in
figures.
later on. He wrote her in later. Yeah, Celebrimbor maybe as well. Yeah, okay.
Celebrimbor only came into this whole thing when Tolkien was writing The Lord of the Rings. They invented him, and then he actually had to change how he was related to Fëanor as well.
Yeah.
Quite a late addition. So he's probably just saying, well, he would have been at the kinslaying, but he didn't take part in it, just to
I would
complete his backstory, you know.
To look at this, I think there's somewhere a mention that and peoples of Middle Earth, but I probably won't find it that fast. That could maybe explain this a bit more. But yeah, he probably did not participate. Galadriel in this context is also a complicated story because Tolkien rewrote her so many times. In one version, her husband Celeborn also came from also lived there basically, and she fought against the kinslayers or against the sons of Fëanor and defended them in one version. But I think in this version also Celeborn is from Aman too, and in the other, or in the, let's say in the canon, because in Lord of the Rings it's not implied, and Tolkien also released these songs, poems thing called The Road Goes Ever On. There's some lore stuff in it too, and it was published by Tolkien himself, so during his lifetime, and that says he's a Sindar elf, so he can't be from Aman. But yeah, as said, he worked in multiple versions. Here we come into the territory of what is now canon, whatnot. This is also like a big problem for the show, which is what canon exactly are they? What are they considering? Which information? I think this is a really difficult topic, canon in Tolkien. Like if you, I don't know, sometimes let me phrase it a bit sloppy. Tolkien YouTubers sometimes piece together the different books and form like a story out of it, if you know what I mean. And
Yeah.
because we like some of the stories so much, and in our mind it makes totally sense. But of course, if you look but there might be people who consider other text or other details, or say no, I think this text might not fit into the grand scheme of everything and so on. That makes canon really, really difficult, I think, and that is, and Second Age is a very it's an area where a lot of this problem happens, like a lot. I mean, First Age too, of course. Only like the Lord of the Rings and some parts of the Third Age become more clear then. But here, especially every time you put Unfinished Tales, one of my favorite books, into it, it becomes complicated. Like suddenly Galadriel has also, besides Celebrian, a son. And then in another version, it's not her son anymore; it's the son of Amdir. Talking about Amroth is his name, and so on. It's
even saying that about Celebrimbor. The Unfinished Tales has him as one of the three Teleri as well. And then another one, it says he's Cinda. And there's another version where he was Naldo. He was a survivor of Gondolin. You know, he's been everything basically. So
it's complicated. There's definitely versions where he's also not related to to Feanor. Like there's one version, I'm not sure. Is he a son? There's like this other, let's call him jewel smith or artifact crafter, whatever you call those people with the craftsmanship. In Gondolin, like I forgot the name, Enervil or something was the name, right? And I'm not sure if they are related in one version or not, but he seems to be like his he was apprentice of Enervil, I think. It's and you see how many different versions there are. In some version he's the son of this guy, in some version he's, I don't know, from this clan, and then from the other. In this version he's the grandson of Feanor, and so on. It's just very complicated and very curious. This is a big problem, I guess, if you think about it. Like, what version are they selecting for the show? Like, is he the grandson of Feanor, which of course would be the most interesting one?
Probably just not mention it.
Maybe not mention it. Maybe that's why they starting with Isildur, because things become a lot clearer there. But
we've got the same issue with Gil-galad and even like Celeborn. You know, it's just there's so many versions of their family tree, and the safest bet will just be to not mention like where they come from. No, that's
and Celeborn will show. I'm pretty sure, because you have the Galadriel story. Even though now we go, you know, like to the end of the Second Age, but still we will. I'm pretty sure. Was she okay? So time-wise, when did she leave via Moria? She left Eregion, right? And then she found Lorien already existed, but she took over. It was end of the Second Age, right? When did she? I don't have that date in. What could we see Galadriel-wise during the time of Isildur, Anarion still being in Numenor? Before the drowning of Numenor, where was Galadriel?
That is a really complicated thing to reconstruct. Galadriel's journeys at some point.
Yeah, so, she was everywhere, but
that's a really a huge problem, because what basically happens is we have the 1600 the ring got forged, then I don't know, a bit later we have the war there, to 1699, I think.
She left earlier.
She left earlier, so somewhere between 1600 and I don't know the date out of my head. I probably will be hard. Let me see. The gates of Moria are shut. That's too late. Maybe I can find. I have the timeline here.
Goes to Imladris after the War of the Elves and Sauron. She goes there and she's looking for Celeborn.
Right, and you're right.
Later she goes to the Aether, Anduin, and Belfalas. So these kind of places.
Is that when the daughter is born? Is she born in Imladris?
That's
really bad with that time period.
Let me just think about for a moment. So the problem is, as Stephen said, she goes to Imladris. There is a council held, basically the predecessor of the White Council, where she probably is part of. And then what happens after that is a bit foggy, because there are different versions of this. In some versions, she goes down to the... Let me just pull on the map. Oh, maybe... Probably hard to get everything here on the screen. So wait, chat. So you know what we're talking about. So Eregion is round about here. Then we have Imladris. Probably won't hit the mark very well. Is somewhere up here. Sorry for placing it a bit imprecisely. And from what he does from here, we don't.
Oh, now I see it. Sorry. Yeah.
Yeah, it's a bit delayed.
Just a bit later. Yeah. Okay, sorry.
So here is this, and then we have Lothlorien, which might be a place where she goes, but in some versions she goes actually, I think, somewhere down here. There is an elven city, which name I forgot currently, and this is also close to Dol Amros, and there's a version where she goes down there and lives there for some time, and her son Amros becomes the king of Lothlorien during that time. And here we enter the territory of what is now canon and whatnot. In some other versions, that is not the case. And maybe she lived also already in Lothlorien, or later came there, I'm not sure. And then Amdir, which is in the other version...
Yeah, he's not her son. Yeah.
Amdir is then a character that doesn't exist in the other version, where Amros is her son. And in the Amdir version, Amdir is the father of Amros, and Amros is not her son anymore. And this is a really confusing part about this. But so after this, she could be either here in Lorien, or she could be somewhere down here. Because also some of the Sindar and so on elves lived down here. They had like a little settlement down here. I'm not exactly sure. It has a name, I forgot. Maybe somebody in chat knows it out of his head. Oh, nice. Kirda knows it. Iselland is the name. My mod. Well done. But yeah, like I said, it's complicated. So what happens exactly at this time, we don't know. However, she did not take over, that's the crazy thing, is that this is not really described in Lord of the Rings. As a result, it could also be possible that she maybe also took over Lothlorien, even though in the Unfinished Tales version there was either Amros as king, or then in the other version Amdir as king of Lothlorien, and she later becomes then the lady and ruler over it.
But, he died. He dies, and yeah.
But really, they're going to simplify it, though. You know, we're talking about all these places. They're going to make her leave Eregion and go to Florian, because that's where
that's probably the simple solution for this.
And the interaction with the dwarves, I think they will show. But then again, this is before the time. This will be before the time of Isildur interactions, in Moria and her. But maybe it's a flashback. I don't know. But it would be nice, to see this. And I think they want to play with these elves and dwarves thingy again. And I hope they won't use the dwarves this time as a comedic relief. But, I always, bash the dwarves, anyone who knows me. But in all seriousness, I think they're really cool. Don't tell anyone. Don't tell Matt. So I think that would be a cool plot, wouldn't it? For an elf, to basically use this pathway, and because the whole Celebrimbor and the dwarves, him forging the doors of the doors of Moria. Who was that? Navi, was it?
Navi, Navi. So he should be a character as well then.
But again, maybe we don't get that because this is like 1,500 years before bloody Isildur.
Do you think the whole been unable to change the established canon, if you want to call it that? Do you think they could condense the timeline a little?
I could imagine this. I mean, they did this in The Hobbit and the Lord of the Rings 2 to some degree. And also, if we think of other media, for example, the Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War games, also have largely...
They're not going to go that route. No.
Although I love the games. I mean, I
Yeah, so
just
do I. Yeah.
recently played it. I mean, I love the bloody games, but
Bonkers though. The story's
Yeah,
just
especially Shadow of War is just
but
yeah,
I mean,
That's
hot
that's
a
a bit
really
Shelob
off.
is a thing. I mean, come on, hot Shelob is a thing, people.
It is.
Well, did they mean to make Shelob look like Kate Blanchett? Like I think that the face they've used for the character in the game really looked like her. I don't know if that was on purpose, but yeah, we're talking about sexy Sarah and that sexy Shelob. I didn't think I'd see that anywhere, but
Yeah. But
big
it's
games though.
interesting.
But
I don't think they can do that, people, because look, he's then the 25th and last king, Ar-Pharazôn, or 26th. I always confuse that. But they can't take that away because then they have to say, okay, because they will show a lot of Numenor, and then they would have to say, okay, so we just had 10 kings, because otherwise it wouldn't make any sense. So they will say this is the 25th and last king of Numenor, Ar-Pharazôn the Golden, that they would have to lie about this then and change it if they dense down the dates.
they could just say the final king,
Yeah.
the last king, without
Yeah.
mentioning all the others. But
Cut out all the numerical information.
yeah, just don't talk about years or anything. Just forget all
I mean,
that.
it can help, I guess, if you have to condense a very complex story. But yeah,
It seems like they're making
Fine.
it difficult on themselves by this whole idea of Isildur being a main character 3 episodes in. It's just like throwing everyone off. Um, how that's going to be possible? I don't know how they're going to manage that. To be honest, like we were just talking about timeline jumps, and I think one thing they could do that Witcher missed out on was at least put a year in the corner when it switches timelines. They didn't even do that, so you're just expected to know that this is a different time. There's no harm in the corner saying second age 1600 something, and then second age 3255 or something. It's you can actually let people know that you're jumping around a lot, you know.
yeah. I mean, it's even a problem in videos, like at least for me often, that I have covered a lot of timeline and always like portraying when exactly does this happen. It's not easy to give like a good overview. Definitely have to put in some effort to explain this. And if you don't have the time for it, and in a TV show or in a movie you don't have time for anything that is not rather focused on the main plot, usually. It's I don't know. It's really it's definitely a challenge. So curious how they will solve all these problems. Like I mean, if you into the universe, round about the timeline, but it's even hard to imagine. Like just imagining 1,000 years for like that's I don't know. That's like if a person gets really old, 10 persons, like it's really a lot of time, like really hard to imagine how people thought 1,000 years ago and they just casually, that is, we start 1,600, then I don't know, 1,800 years later, the age ends, and then we have another 3,000 years, and Lord of the Rings starts, and it's just okay. It's just like crazy amount of time.
Imagine a TV show that had timeline. It was like Julius Caesar's in one episode, and then later on in the episode it goes to World War II. That's
like, and therefore they talked about the pyramids. The pyramids.
Yeah. No, it's true, but then I mean the thing is I still think so thinking about the Isildur topic. I mean, again, I wanted to have the year 1500 with the forging of the rings and Celebrimbor, yada yada yada. But thinking of Isildur, it kind of does make sense because this is kind of the coolest time in Numenor besides the Aldarion and Erendis and maybe Tar Teperian. No, I mean, what's Tar Ankalime? No, Tar Teperian, but she was during the time of the forging of the ring, so that's the same. So I really do think like when it gets really hot and like a Temple of Doom, Sauron being in Numenor. Imagine Isildur knew Sauron in fair form. He was a prisoner while Isildur was still in Numenor. I mean, he left just before the drowning, so he knew Sauron in a fair form. And then later on, he fights, him having lost that form, which is kind of a cool connector and really interesting, because he knows a lot about that guy, and you don't think about it when you just, know the later timelines, but he knows a lot about that guy. He saw him coming and arriving as a prisoner to getting to the advisor of the king. I think this is kind of, and this is what I'm always preaching, like this whole, deprived Numenor, like everything got dark. Like this is the height of the Numenorian culture. This is how Tolkien explains it. They were at their height, but morally, they were at their lowest, right? So they became richer and richer and richer, and basically the streets are probably paved in gold, but there were tombs everywhere. They were obsessed with immortality. Sauron literally built a temple of doom, worshipping Melkor. This is like really a cool time in Numenor,
Yeah, there's a lot of stuff going on. True.
Yeah. So I think, I mean, because during all the other times in Numenor, there were 2-3 interesting rulers, but the rest, what do we know about them? One guy liked silver, the other guy was a tower watcher. This is like, when you look at the annals of the kings, it's, some are really boring and we don't even know anything about them. Why did Tolkien wrote a lot about these times, right? So I think, and the whole incest thingy, with Ar-Pharazôn, force marrying his cousin.
I'll mention that has to be in it. This is bringing in this kind of Game of Thrones audience now, aren't we? So.
Yeah, and people will be like, "What? Tolkien wrote this stuff?"
In some versions, Galadriel is a cousin of Celeborn.
And her uncle had the hots for her, and Meglin had the hots for his cousin, and Eol kind of.
Yeah. Let's not go down that rabbit hole.
There's a few.
If we talk about Eol, the video will get taken down. So talk about him. I don't know what you're saying with Ar-Pharazôn. There's like 60, 70 years worth of events that are going on, and you have to really go back to maybe our minister with the War of the Elves and Sauron and that kind of thing. That'd be the most relevant to if we're tying in Sauron to everything, and that's thousands of years before.
150, so, that's a long time before. Yeah.
Basically saying we've no idea how they're going to do this, so.
Yes, it's really a difficult endeavor, but maybe they just really focus on Isildur and tell a story in a lot of detail, and then maybe jump to the Third Age or to another point of view in the past, or I don't know what they're going to do. Another thought I had, the Hobbit stuff. That's maybe also an interesting topic, I guess, because now that we are very late in the Second Age, like Isildur was born. Does somebody out of his head know when Isildur was born? He was born
3,209.
Not bad, you're right. 3,209 he was born.
Some notes.
Not.
I'm prepared, Pete.
I would have let you let your genius go through, but and the Second Age ends, I think, 3,441 or 2. Something like this, so 41, and so that's not that much later if you think about it.
No, he was 234 years old when he died.
So... and he died as Third Age 2. So,
a short life, cut short there.
But still, for a show with 5 seasons to cover like. Probably him being very young. It's not like he will be shown as a baby and it will be about Amandil. I don't think that. He will be shown as a young boy or a young man, because you can still tell the Amandil story. Him leaving, and then you can cover. And this is what I'm saying. Like they don't need to kill off characters. So in season 3. All the humans will be dead and the only people you still know from season 1 have to be elves. No. If you tell the Isildur story where a lot happens, you have to cover 200 years and they all will still be alive. Ar-Pharazôn is there, Miriel will be there, Tar Palantir. You can have a lot of protagonists. The elves obviously all are still alive. You don't need to kill off humans because they die of natural age if you now cover 1,500 years.
Yeah. And yeah, I just wanted to to make the point that I think I wrote it on Twitter that this comes the Hobbit topic. This comes relatively close to when the Hobbits were Third Age 1050. I mean, it's still 1,000 years away, but it's like just imagining like a proto Hobbit culture somewhere might be more thinkable if it's this late in the Second Age. I mean, we have the mythology of the people from Rohan that have in their language, or it's translated with Old English, Holbülter, for the name for the hobbits, and they appear in their mythology. We know that the hobbits share words with the Rohirrim, also represented by Old English in the, let's say, call it Tolkien's translation. And the Hobbit language is gone, so they must have contact with the ancestors of the Rohirrim and the Eotheod, or whoever, or the Proto-Eotheod, or whatever you want to call them, the Norsemen there. And they, I mean, the process of losing your own language and adapting another language takes some time. I'm not sure if it's maybe 1,000 years is probably a bit long, but I guess with very, very good arguing and reasoning, you could maybe say, yeah, maybe there were somewhere in Rovanion or wherever some hobbits
close to the Anduin. Close to the
Anduin.
I don't think it's sorry. We know that Tolkien says that their origins are in the Elder Days. I've no problem with
exactly.
hobbits being around in the late Second Age. I'm just wondering what kind of stories are you going to make up for hobbits?
Yeah, that is
stories or the later stories, you know. Nothing.
I mean, they can't have, at least they can't have really contact with the elves and have a huge impact, because then it would have been mentioned in the elven records. Same with the Númenóreans, because they just appear in Eriador when the Dúnedain in exile in Arnor probably met them. Maybe they went through Rivendell. No, that's debatable, and definitely some went over the Redhorn Pass, the Sturs later, and I think the Harfoots could have took another path. I think they take the north route, and the other two breeds, or whatever you want to call them, I think went over the Redhorn Pass. I'm not sure. Would need to look up my notes for that, but yes.
But maybe it is an evolutional topic they want to play on, because look, we have they will explain there are different tribes of elves, there are different houses of elves, right? I think they will hint at that and explain that when, for example, Galadriel goes to Lothlorien, they will explain these are actually not her people, but they still accepted her as their queen, although they said will never take an Uldorian ruler, but then they did. But anyway, so I think they will. So they will introduce different. It's not every elf is the same. I think they will hint at that. They obviously you will see differences between men of Middle Earth, Black Númenóreans and Númenóreans. Númenóreans being superior to the men and who stayed back in Middle Earth. I think they will play with that. And then they can even go down the Hobbit route explaining, okay, how are there three different tribes? Why do they look different? What are their... I think that was what I was thinking of, that it will be this differentiation, like how humanity developed over time and changed, and we all stem from Africa, but then some went there, this is why we all look different today. Like, I think maybe so they explain like hobbits came maybe from men, but they developed over time and adapted to different climate and blah. So this is what I was thinking. Maybe I'm wrong, but
that all makes sense. But the difference would, like, in terms of storytelling, would be that with those tribes of elves, those groups of elves, so many stories are there. There's so much to explore, and just explaining that there's these different tribes of hobbits, going to have to invent self-contained stories for the hobbits.
That's
they're
true.
it's
Yeah,
just
but
going to cut to somewhere, and they're just going to have
I mean,
Hobbit stories for hobbits. You know,
the only connection they can have, or the only people to which where stories can happen with, even maybe some bigger impact, is with the Norsemen, because then
Yeah.
obviously needs to be an interaction with them and the Norsemen, else they would not have adopted their language. They have to live close, maybe in a same place, same village, whatever. That's the only explanation, at least if you think about logically, how they adopted the language. So, and we probably know that the Norsemen don't really were that at that time into writing down records. That's probably why it's not mentioned later. And they must have totally avoided what is going on. We know that the Numenorians definitely knew about the Norsemen, though, but maybe didn't pay too much attention to them, and just recognize them as their kin because they have a similar language or the language are related, and that is basically it. But maybe never encountered the hobbits, so it must be small hobbit stories near the Anduin or whatever.
I think that maybe giving too much credit to these writers, like what you say, makes complete sense with the language situation where you can tie it all in based on that. But to me, it just seems like you've paid a fortune for this. These movies made billions. People love hobbits. Let's put hobbits in it.
You're right.
And they're just going to make up stories about hobbits. I don't think they're going to care about how they fit in. They're just going to say hobbits were there, and just going to have.
They're
hobbit
not the
stories.
main protagonist. I think it's just a plot, like a coy, to drag you in, so you have something to relate to, which you know.
Exactly. I agree. That's why they're doing it. But I'm just kind of wondering what kind of stories they could think of that are as interesting as Bilbo's and Frodo's stories, which are not going to get better than that in Hobbit history. So it just doesn't seem like there'd be interesting stories to tell about them. The founding of the Shire is the other most interesting thing.
Way later, with Blanco and what was the other one? Blanco and
I don't remember the name Blanco.
Blanco and something with an M, whatever. You know who I mean?
Yeah, we know.
You're talking about the founders of the Shire. Marcho, isn't it?
Marcho,
yeah.
That's
but
like
maybe
way
it's
later.
more this. But I always found the hobbits, like when you see somebody like Farmer Maggot and these people, you can play with this being very suspicious, because a lot is going on in Middle-earth at that time, and they have to, probably move their home or leave their homeland for whatever reason, move towards the Shire. Some did earlier, some did later. Maybe this is but it's not really interesting. You're right, Stephen. I don't know.
Yeah,
I don't want to judge it before we know anything, but I was just thinking with all this epic political intrigue with Numenor and Rings of Power, it's like, we're going to go into a Hobbit episode, and I'm like, that doesn't sound very.
And definitely, I think that revelation was one of the most surprising. I mean, talking about Isildur in a Second Age show makes totally sense, but like hobbits, I would not have guessed. But make a good point, Stephen, that they have a multi-billion-dollar show and people know hobbits, people like hobbits. And
you're not the audience, basically. I keep telling people that if you're really into Tolkien, you're talking about dates where Galadriel could be and all that. They're not caring about us. It's wide audience, and they're going, like, they were always going to include hobbits. It makes sense that they're going to do that because hobbits have been the focus of $6 billion worth of cinema tickets. So they weren't going to avoid including them. Opinion.
Yeah, that's true. I don't know.
Cynical.
I mean, it's also difficult to satisfy both sides. I mean, there are with the films there are already some expectations, also to an audience that is not that deep into Lord of the Rings, basically set, and maybe they have the pressure or they feel the need to fulfill those, and that's why they maybe put in the Hobbits there. Maybe in an ideal case scenario, maybe they have like a really good idea why they're doing this. Maybe it's a weird structure that we don't see, or I don't know. But I don't expect. Sorry.
Continue.
Someone, I just wanted to say there's someone in the chat, Adam, who's basically confirmed that there's going to be a whole episode on how hobbits invented golf.
Yes, please. But that was later on, apparently. Well, I want to see them, having those archers they claim to had in the Third Age, warring against the Witch King. Like, show me how they got trained in the Second Age. No, whatever. But you know what? I'm not against this if this brings in new viewers, because I experience a lot on my channel that a lot of people, so many people, tell me the stories how when I have all these interviews with people on my channel, some tell me, they got through to the books through the movies. They first, saw the movies and then they were like, oh, I want to know more about this. So then they picked up the Lord of the Rings, then they picked up the Silmarillion, then they, if you're really crazy, you go to the 12 volume of the History of Middle-earth books, and then yada, 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 and then it's down the rabbit hole, then you're lost like us. But,
Yeah.
I find that beautiful. And if the Hobbit thingy, because somebody I also see there's a new generation out there. A lot of my viewers are like 16 to 18 or 21. So none of them have seen, like us old farts, the movies probably in the cinema at once and at one point. And I find that beautiful. And if the Hobbit, the Hobbit thingy triggers people because they've seen maybe and they like the Hobbit movies, they're like, oh, cool, Hobbits are in the show. I'll give it a try. If that helps, to spread the word, the word about Tolkien and brings in new people who like different things. I love that. I'm
that is
totally
true.
fine. Yeah.
I mean,
Agree,
in our world, of course, every episode would be like a language study of the transition.
No, for you, Chris. I'm not. No, it's just for you.
From the Proto-Hobbit language to the Norse language to split up into the Gothic and the Old English.
Want an
part.
episode on beards? Just
Oh yeah,
An episode on beards.
No, but I agree with you, Helen. It's I'm not saying there's a lot of people who are completely like outraged that hobbits are in it, and there's been all these debates that I don't get at all. It was like I said, I knew they were going to include them, but I don't have a problem with them including hobbits. It's such a weird thing to get worked up about. But all I'm saying is I wonder what quality of story they can tell about it, because I know they're going to invent stories. Like they're obviously going to invent some stuff, because there's not a lot Second Age like dialogue that's in the books and all this. But it's just I'm interested to see how they can tie in all this Numenor stuff with something like hobbits. It just seems like such a they're so opposed in terms of the scale of the story. Maybe that's the whole point. It's going to be a large kind of high scale thing, and then it's like simple hobbit stories at the same time, something like that. But I don't mind that it's bringing more people in, and that's obviously a good thing.
I mean,
Boys,
it's
I'll just be off for 2 minutes. I need to feed my cat. Sorry, they're screaming. I'll be back in a second. Sorry.
yeah, okay. Greet the cats. We continue this in the meantime. If you think about it's not it's one of the purposes, I guess, in the books for the hobbits is definitely having an anchor point for the viewer to connect with. Of course, this was even more true maybe in the 50s, 60s, and so on, than it's maybe today, like how they are. And that's an interesting quote from Tolkien, where he basically essentially says, "I'm a hobbit." It's where he says, "Yeah, I like good food. I like to smoke my pipe. I wear a waistcoat or whatever it's called." And it's there are a lot of similarities. So I guess it makes sense to basically adopt this idea of having this anchor point for the viewer or for the reader, and maybe use the Hobbit again as this, because besides every other character besides the hobbits are just these great heroes. Like if you think of Galadriel with this ancient history behind her and what she did, and Elrond and Gil-galad and so on, all these great kings and lords. But maybe, I guess, I'm not a writer in this. I'm not sure how much needed is a relatable figure. I mean, it's really difficult to relate to an elf if you think about it. Like, he's immortal, or she. It is very it's so much away from my personal experience now. Helen spoke about that. We are we old farts sitting here. Getting older is definitely I think I noticed too, and I don't know. Maybe this is like a very human topic, and you need maybe those points of connect to connect to. I guess you could argue that they could just implement normal humans, like some Norsemen or something like this. I mean, the Numenorians also with their 200 years lifespan is definitely something else. And I don't know.
That's what I was going to say. It was if we can't relate to elves, especially elves that have come from Valinor and these kind of places. Even the Numenorians are superhuman. They're hardly relatable. It's all lofty, and then I thought maybe Northmen as well, a bit like how you can probably relate more to Men of Rohan than Men of Gondor and Lord of the Rings. So it seems like maybe hobbits are a way to ground everything. You know, it's not all going to be Arthurian legend type scale. It's going to be relatable, more human stories with the hobbits. That's probably how they've convinced themselves to do it, and it could work. You know, it's not. Well, I think a lot of people are hoping it fails because they've included hobbits, but I don't think that's the worst announcement that's been made or anything like that. It's it could work with hobbits, I guess, but
definitely.
It's not the end of the world.
As you say, even the Numenorians, like Elendil, is how tall is he if you translate it? Like 2.40 or something like this. He was called Elendil the Tall. He was like 7'11" or something like that. I'm not sure. I'm not good at the imperial system, but I think round about 2 meters 40 centimeters or 2 meters 50. He could definitely play in the NBA. It's just
7'11" is, and it's quite funny. He's like, Elendil the Tall, but the people that he's taller than are all about 7 foot as well. So it's they're all giants, you know.
He's a giant among the giants.
These are as close to elves, like, in terms of like their spirit and that as well. You get, so it's like if you just had elves and Numenorians, it's it could be quite strange. I think that's why we have more of these more grounded characters that they're going to have. It can't all be in the court of Numenor, you know.
Yeah, I totally agree. Helen, you're back. Great. Just want to make sure that we can now include you again to our discussion here.
You were talking about tall people. I'm a very tiny person. I'm like 5'4". Is that correct? Yeah, I think I'm 5'4". I'm tiny.
I can't translate my height without googling into the foot measurement.
I'm 165 centimeters, and I'm very tiny. I'm a hobbit.
Okay, I guess it's not that tiny. I know persons that are
for Germans, it's I'm for Germans.
I'm also only 1.78 m, so also not that tall.
I have to give my height out here. You know.
Stephen, come on, spill. Are you a Numenorian or a hobbit?
I'm closer to hobbit. I think I do it in feet, obviously, but I think in meters it would be about 177. I think.
So you're just about Chris, yeah.
Yeah, my size. Okay. Awesome.
Okay.
Now we know how tall we are.
We're not Numenorians, any of us.
No. Well, I still want to be cast as an elf one day, but it won't happen.
Probably have to get on your high heels.
Yeah, but I have exactly. Always show me on a horse. I have another question for you. If you think that is a cool big thing, but this will be later in the show. But I always found that fascinating, and I think wants to tell us that it was the case. So, do you think that Isildur ever wanted to give up the ring? What do you feel like? I think that will be shown in the show at the end of the show, if it ends, with his death, maybe. Because he was on the way, I think he was on his way to see his son and his wife in Imladris, right, when he got killed.
Yeah, the movie makes it look like it happens
It's weird, yeah.
as if he's leaving the battle, but it's like a couple of years later.
It's later,
I
yeah.
guess
So
that's
he had the ring.
the time and space magic of film. Sometimes really hard to undo, I guess.
Like Frodo was had the ring just for 5 minutes, but he was like, for how many years did he have the bloody ring anyway? But this is storytelling,
17.
Yeah. Chris knows. But this is, like a movie needs another pacing, obviously. But do you guys think, did he want to give up the ring, or did he try, or because we have words from him saying, we have direct quotes from him about the ring, that he kind of, I don't know if one of you can grab those, but it's like a comprehension for, the loss of his brother and his father in a way. And he deserves the ring and blah, blah. It's very similar to what later on you hear, Boromir. In a bit, it always reminded me to Boromir's obsession with the ring, although he never held him. But do you think we will see this struggle of a ring bearer? Because I would find that really cool.
It's an interesting question. I think you speak of the quote from the Council of Elrond. And yeah, it would be interesting to see if he struggles with it or not. I mean, the sentence ends with, "It is precious to me, though I buy it with great pain." And I don't know. He even describes it as, can I find it really fast enough?
I don't think he would be wanting to give it up. Like you say,
Yeah,
it's precious to him, but before that, he's talking about leaving it as an heirloom of the North Kingdom, and he probably thinks he's justified in keeping it through the, like he calls like a weregild of his father and brother, and I don't know if they'd show a struggle of him wanting to keep the ring. It seems like he was very quick to accept that it was his, and they might show him growing to realize that it's not what he thinks it is, because he talks about how the writing looks, how it seems to be something that Sauron shouldn't have been able to make because it's so beautiful, but then he knows that it's he still knows that it's evil. So that, maybe that kind of struggle would be there, but I don't think there'll be any struggle about him wanting to get rid of it. It seems like he's maybe accepting it despite what it's doing to him. I think they'd maybe show something like that, but I hope they do show something like that, because I think before I shut up, that Isildur is kind of a disservice in the films. I know he's only in it very briefly, but it kind of makes him seem like a creepy, evil guy that was really stupid for keeping the ring. I think they should show this struggle of what he's lost before he accepted it, and then those 2 years that he carried it, maybe tortured by having it, but he's still desperate to have it be his. And if they do that right, that could be pretty cool. But that's just I don't think he wanted to give it up, but he was convincing himself more that it was a good thing that he had it. That's how Isildur. Don't know if you agree, but
I think he wanted to get rid of it. I don't. This is how I feel, and I do think the scene, because I always thought about this when reading more about how the ring was forged and Mount Doom itself, and that the malice of Melkor is still there. So this is a very powerful magic place. So destroying the ring, where the power of the ring is at its strongest, is so perverted. And it's insane that it took, in the end, Gollum and basically Eru interfering himself. Otherwise, nobody could have destroyed the ring. And I always thought about, I was never mad learning all this at Isildur for not destroying the ring in that moment. I was when I first read it, but the more I learned about Mount Doom and the forging of the ring and blah blah, I was never mad at Isildur for not being able to destroy the ring. I was thinking, if he gave the ring to Elrond, would Elrond be able to destroy the ring? I mean, he's a descendant of Earendil. Maybe that makes him special. Maybe he has the power to withstand it. But maybe they show us this scene, and this struggle. I'm not mad at him, first of all, and second, I always ask myself, Elrond really have done it? Because I think it took God in the end to interfere and destroy the bloody thing, because nobody else, I don't think anyone could. I think a lot of people couldn't even carry it to there because they wanted to possess it. But Frodo didn't want to possess it, right? It was a different struggle Frodo had and other ring bearers had. So I just want to see this struggle. And I do think, and I think I read somewhere, but don't quote me, but there is I don't know where he apparently wanted to give the ring to this is why he also went to Rivendell, not just to see his son and his last son and his wife, but also wanted to give the ring to try to give the ring to Elrond, and that apparently he had several attempts to give the ring to somebody else, but the ring was too strong still and too sentient at that time, because it was still fresh from Sauron's hand, that he couldn't. But I always find this scene, like in the in the volcano itself, very fascinating, and I think Elrond also wouldn't be able to destroy the ring. That's my.
Do you think that's that happens with a lot of the ring bearers, where like Gollum, he hates it and loves it though.
Yeah.
So if you were like, do you want it destroyed? He'd probably say yes, but he doesn't really. He wouldn't.
Exactly.
He wouldn't let you destroy it. But do you know?
It's like Bilbo saying, "Okay, I'll leave the ring here," but then he still keeps it.
Yeah.
They want to, but they don't.
Do you know?
Yeah.
I wanted to ask this just quickly about the text. I know the movie, the Fellowship of the Ring movie, shows Elrond and Isildur and the Sammath Naur, and he's convincing him to throw it in. But I never got that. I know they don't go there in the books, but I never got the impression that as soon as Isildur claimed it, Elrond was saying, "You should go and destroy this now." I always read it in the books as he claimed it and that was kind of accepted, but then the wise tried to convince him to destroy it. And but I've always read it as that coming later. It's not as if they were standing on the slopes of Mount Doom saying, "Now you should go and destroy it." I don't know what you think about that, because everyone seems to think that it means as soon as he took it that they were all pushing for him to destroy it. But there seems to be this idea that they thought Sauron was defeated, and they were quite happy to think that he wasn't going to come back, because they didn't know everything about the One Ring. Like, there's not this universal knowledge that Sauron would take shape again. So could it not be that later on they were maybe based on Isildur's relationship with this ring, that they were saying you should destroy it? I don't know.
I can give you an answer to this.
Text. Yeah. There you go.
It's an interesting point that you do, that they probably, that's a really good point, and I agree on that they probably also had no idea how this ring exactly works, what it does, what is now going on with Sauron. I think there's a quote that even says that Sauron was surprised that he survived this. And it is interesting. But to your question, no, it's definitely, or at least I would read it that it happens at the time at Mount Doom, because here it says, "He alone stood by his father in the last mortal contest, and by Gil-galad. Only Círdan stood, and I," that is Elrond, "but Isildur would not listen to our counsel." So in this context, I would read it as it happened at basically standing next to them, giving this advice. So And considering that Círdan and Elrond both are known for their foresight, they probably had the idea, yeah, dude, now's the time, destroy it. But I agree with Helen. They probably could have not destroyed it themselves. In letter 192, for example, Tolkien also talks about this. Frodo deserves all honor because he spent every drop of his power and will and body, and that was just sufficient to bring him to the destined point and no further. Few others, possibly no others of his time, would have got so far. And I guess the question is, who are the few others? Maybe Elrond, but I don't think so, because even Galadriel is very happy to not take the One Ring. So I guess Elrond would have been happy to.
Thing. Yeah.
Yeah. I think Elrond would have been in the same boat, and Círdan too. But I guess also in a way, and I mean, in my opinion, Tolkien is often about fate is definitely a topic in Tolkien's books, and I think it was not the fate of any other to take the ring there. And this is maybe also, I guess, a part of foresight, to know it is his fate to take the ring. We can advise him to destroy it, but we can't take it. We can't take it away from him, and we probably couldn't destroy it anyway. So we have to accept what he's gonna do with it.
The idea, not that we're talking about who could destroy it, and I think the greater your inherent kind of power, we're talking about Galadriel and Elrond and all these, they've probably got less chance of destroying it. But if you were mentioning letters there, I think letter 51, Tolkien makes a point of saying that he's talking about beyond the strength of any will, even his own, that's Sauron, to injure it, cast it away, or neglect it. But then he says, so he thought. So does that not make it clear that Tolkien is writing that it's Sauron that believed no one would be able to do these things, but that it is still possible to do? It's maybe, like you're just saying there, at the time that they were destroying it, there was maybe no one left who could will themselves to throw it in, but at some point there may have been, maybe, I can't really think of who, but why would Tolkien say this is just Sauron who believed this if it was a universal fact that no one could do it?
But the wizard. So why were the wizards? Or let me start with another thing. So the thing is, I think the elves understood one thing: the higher you rise, the more powerful you are. The higher the fall is, right? So they knew this concept of them being very powerful. The ring would become very powerful, and therefore the struggle to use the ring, and I do think they understood that because they had rings themselves. I really do think somehow the elves, in a way, understood what the ring could do. They also so I think they had this understanding. Yeah, I think they had this understanding, and then I think that wizards came with the job to help fight against Sauron. What does that mean? What did they do with Melkor? They captured him and chained him, put him, threw him in the void. Or the timeless hall, wherever he was, where Arendelle is guarding him. Sorry, it's very late. I've been talking a lot. And I do think the wizards could potentially have the power to destroy them. This is my thinking. I think Eru had that in mind, or the Valar, when they sent the wizards, right? But Gandalf didn't trust enough in himself. He didn't want to interfere in that way in the story. Then Saruman got corrupted, basically, and wanted he then wanted dominion over that bloody ring. The blue, we don't have any idea, and Radagast, but I do think the only people who could have done it were the wizards. That is because their form of being is very different. They, hobbits not powerful, so therefore the ring doesn't do the same to them. Men, powerful, easily corrupted. Numenoreans, especially powerful, seeing with them, also easily corrupted. Elves would use it for a different thing, but in the end it would be a bad outcome. So it's only the wizards as a complete different concept of being that could destroy it, because a wizard, not a wizard, but a Maiar created the bloody thing. And they were
But
not
sorry.
human.
But if you're saying that we have Saruman, who shows that there's a capability of a greater fall, a desire for the ring. So if you're saying the wizards, you're pretty much meaning Gandalf, I'm assuming, and especially Gandalf the White. Like if you're telling me a figure
Because the
could
Grey
probably
didn't trust
destroy it,
himself. Yeah, the Grey he didn't trust himself. This is why he was less powerful, because he didn't have that trust in himself.
the White, Gandalf the White's enhanced in wisdom and power and all that. So that, if you were saying that, I'd probably also put Glorfindel in that category then,
Yeah,
because
maybe. Yeah.
he died,
Yeah.
went to the halls, he grew in spirit. Basically, they're saying he's pretty much as I don't like doing power levels or anything, but they consider him
Yeah, you're
as
right.
great as a Maiar, and me, he seems above the concept of personal
You're
power.
right.
So
He was
he
sent back for the Witch King thingy. This is why he was sent back. He was sent back exactly at that time. So he was sent back by the Valar, just like he sent the.
an emissary, yeah. So he's probably above that concept of I want to keep this ring for personal glory and power and that kind of thing. He's been personally sent by the Valar. Probably put him in that same category as Gandalf the White. It's such a kind of unique position. But if we're talking about the wizards as a whole, I think Radagast, the Blue Wizards, and especially Saruman wouldn't. Radagast probably wouldn't even take it. But
I think there lies also like a lesson in this, in my opinion. Gandalf is, especially as Gandalf the White, I could think, yeah, maybe he could destroy the ring, but he fears it. He does not, and I think this is part of his wisdom.
Yeah,
that is why he probably would not destroy it, because he would not take it at all. He would be wise enough to say, no, I don't take it, and he probably sees a path how this could end differently, especially then later as Gandalf the White. Of course, there's the obvious candidate of Tom Bombadil, I guess, as like the enigmatic exception in the world.
I just wanted to say, okay, Tom Bombadil, but somebody in the chat, wait, who was it? This is epic, said the old Took. I agree.
Yeah, the old Took.
Yeah, wait, who said
and
it?
the old Took, of course. How could we forget him?
Dented Cobra, shout out to you. Old Took, yes, all along.
But Tom Bombadil would walk all the way to Mordor and then realize that he's not brought the ring, probably. So
Exactly.
Yeah.
That is also like another lesson, like in this, like Tom Bombadil is in a way so different or so above everything that he doesn't even, in his spheres, the ring does not really matter or is in any form desirable or interesting, because he's just above it. While on Gandalf's level, it is around the level of Gandalf the Grey, or maybe even Gandalf the White, but he is too wise to take it. He does not want it. It's something he wants to avoid. Why would somebody take the poison? And maybe he can destroy it, maybe he cannot. He has the potential, as we just discussed, to maybe being able to destroy it, but he's probably not 100% sure if he could this, and in this lies also some wisdom. And in contrast, for example, Saruman, who really wants that ring, he definitely would not destroy the ring. So the ambitions and ideas are so different for all these characters, which is kind of interesting that they all have like a different access to power, and if that makes sense. Gandalf has more an access over his wisdom, over his foresight, and how he interacts with people, managed to motivate them to do incredible things. Saruman sees the power in himself and wants to enhance it and rule and form the world. Same with Sauron. And Radagast is just also probably a bit outside of everything. And the Blue Wizards, we just simply don't know enough about them.
Apparently, they will be in the show.
Just a quick point. We were talking about the ring there. Part of it, not that it would a greater chance of destroying it, though, if you had someone supporting you in trying to do it. So it's not so much that Gandalf the White would take the ring and throw it in, but you could maybe get the will within you to destroy it if Gandalf the White was there to support you in doing that. Would that not fit in with these themes of friendship and all this kind of stuff, where Gandalf doesn't need to destroy it himself, but if he went with Frodo, wouldn't Gandalf be able to really help Frodo muster that courage to destroy the ring? Do you not think that would be possible? It doesn't have to be you on your own convincing yourself to do it. Like Gandalf convinces Bilbo to finally leave the ring, which no one seems to talk about. That's a major thing. He's held it for years, and I know it's different inside Mount Doom, but would Frodo not have had a greater chance to destroy it if Gandalf had actually walked in there with him? Or if Sam was the one convincing Frodo and Gollum didn't attack them? Do you not think that's a possibility?
It's an interesting point. I mean, Gandalf, it worked already with Bilbo in a way. He doesn't destroy it, but he managed with Gandalf's help, Bilbo managed with Gandalf's help to leave the One Ring behind. So I guess that's an interesting thought. That
Cast it
there.
away. Like, we've had that letter that I quoted from, and it says no one, like Sauron thought no one could cast it away.
Yeah.
Bilbo leaves it and accepts he's not going to get it again, and I would count that as casting it away, and that's through his own willpower, obviously, but Gandalf clearly was instrumental in doing that. Yeah, so we can't underestimate if the Istari were sent to help, and especially Gandalf.
Yeah.
What he could do if he'd actually reached Mount Doom with Frodo, if he could overrule this will of Sauron to have Frodo finally destroy it. I don't really know if that'd be the case, but everyone always wonders, well, what would have happened if Gandalf went with Frodo? Would it be something like that?
Helen? Helen is not there.
You go first. Sorry, I'm just reading the chat. I'm just interacting with the chat.
Okay, I was just absorbed in production for a moment.
I can just talk myself if it's easier.
A lot of people listening to you. Sorry for that, man. But yeah, it's the Gandalf is definitely an interesting figure into this. I mean, his whole intention and the whole intention of the Istari is not to basically actively be the rebellion, but advise those and encourage those to start a rebellion against Sauron. And I think this fits the point. And maybe Saruman did not get the memo or something. I don't know. I'm not sure, but
it's like for Saruman, it's more still wants to defeat Sauron, and this is the way of doing it. It's that kind of sin of he's got impatience, like great impatience, and I'm going to use the ring against Sauron. It doesn't matter if I replace him, I've still defeated him. Gandalf's got a completely different outlook. But it's just I've always just wondered what people thought if before the breaking of the Fellowship, and if it was Sam, Frodo, and Gandalf. I know that the whole idea is just to get it as close to Mount Doom, and fate will hopefully lead to its destruction. But what role Gandalf would play if he actually reached such a point. He's not just going to stand around, is he? He's going to really try and help Frodo, and he's not going to force it from Frodo to destroy it. So I think my whole point is, instead of wondering if someone can destroy it themselves, you have to think of like a close friend or whatever, kind of helping you destroy it. And the people who claim the ring and want to keep the ring don't have anyone like that. So,
that is a good point. Especially, I mean, Gandalf as is sent by the Valar, and later then as Gandalf the White by it's confirmed by Eru, you could say, but the Valar basically do actions in the sense of Eru, except for Melkor, I guess, but that's another story. in a sense. So in a way, we can of course, jumping back to the letter I read a moment ago, it also says the other power then took over, the writer of the story, by which I do not mean myself. And he refers to Eru here and Tolkien, and in a way, maybe if Gandalf would have been there, he would have been the last power that was needed, this godly power, this divine power that was needed to cast the ring actually and destroy into the abyss and destroy it. And maybe Gandalf would have just taken this role as basically the ambassador of Eru in a weird way, if that makes sense. And with him not being there, then Eru has to take direct action himself. And I guess maybe, but this is my
won't get
idea.
into details here, but I tend to disagree when people say it was, they say it's Eru, which kind of makes sense, but I always think of it as more as fate and the oath that Gollum swore, and that's under the purview of Eru. It's not Eru actually, blowing a wind that pushes Gollum over.
Yeah, that's not what happens.
Fault. But
it's
the fact is that Gandalf, exactly. The fact is Gandalf the White has been sent by Eru. He's taken up the plan of the Valar, enlarged it, and he's given far more authority to deal with this problem. And we have to think that if God himself has sent back Gandalf the White, if he's away from the ring by that point, but if he was there, surely have some role to play in the destruction of the ring. He's not going to be an idle kind of bystander. Yeah. He's sent by power far above Sauron with his blessing. So I can't even imagine what it'd be like, a word of command or something like that. Just something where it's he really appeals to Frodo to destroy it, and it maybe work, because Sauron isn't the greatest power in the world. And, we maybe can't imagine this power that Gandalf holds because Eru's sent him back. He would have some direct role in destroying the ring, but never gets to that place after returning. But I think it's interesting to think of what role Gandalf could have played if he'd been there.
But sometimes I think the stories get more important, and you see whenever Eru interferes, so divine intervention, basically, I think the Bible would call it. This is a very important turning point in the story. Things change, an island drowns, a new age starts. I think if Gandalf would have done it in Eru's will or whatever, if it would be a puppet fulfilling, or not a puppet, but would cheapen the meaning of this story in a way for me. So I think this divine intervention and God has been absent for centuries, right? So were the Valar. They basically abandoned this, but in the moment of need, when it was basically last minute saving, he was there. I think that is and he didn't just send somebody, and it's just not somebody doing it for him. It was really him. I think that is, in a way, it makes it more powerful.
Same with talking about Frodo there. A lot of people say like he failed to destroy the ring, but the whole idea, I remember
the ring bearer. He was not the ring destroyer.
He's the martyr. He's taken the ring
like
as far,
Jesus. Yeah, like Jesus did. Yeah, with a cross.
As far as it can go, and then fate it takes over. But Frodo was the one that took it as far as anyone, especially mortal race, could have taken it. And not cheap to then see how it's destroyed. There's a lot of it's the fault of Gollum that it's destroyed. All has chances to be redeemed and all this. So it's a lot of people do say it's cheap, but I don't agree with that. I think it's
that's true. I mean, Tolkien also makes, to come back to what you just said, you mentioned the oath of Gollum, which I think is a very interesting idea that Tolkien puts into his book. Of course, I mean, it basically is a bit like Gollum tripped and fell over while dancing after he got the ring, and it is basically somewhat interpreted as, or not interpreted, but Tolkien implies that Eru basically created the situation for him to trip and fall over. But there is some, I don't know how to. There's some. What's the word for it? It's legitimate. There's something that below it, because we have this oath. Gollum has to maybe for people not too familiar with it, has to swear an oath to on the ring, or to that he would not, basically, as simple words, betray his master and claim the ring again. Else he would have to cast himself into a fire, or in this case the fires of Mount Doom, and that is exactly what happens. Gollum takes this, and then this is the what is the word for it? Can you know what I mean? Legitimierung is what I'm looking for.
Legitimate?
Legitimacy. That's how it's pronounced, I think. Yeah, there's some. Yeah,
Stephen is like, these bloody German.
Yeah, some. You know when you know the word, but in your mind it does make click, and you can't pronounce it. It's terrible. But sorry for that. But yeah, legitimacy is behind it. It's really hard to say, and that he falls down there. It's not Eru being mean. This is basically Gollum has said, I swear an oath that I cast myself into a fire if I do this, and then this happens, and it's not like, as I said, an evil deed by Eru, or it's just the consequence of his actions, if it makes sense.
Do you know, there's a strange
fulfill themselves, right? You see that, with the Feanorians, with the like what Mandos.
Yeah.
This is always, it's a self-fulfilling prophecy in a way.
There's something interesting about that oath, though, where if you read what Gollum actually swears to, part of what he swears is not to let the ring basically return to Sauron.
Yeah,
it's not just I'm going to not betray Frodo, and some people have interpreted it as him fulfilling his oath because Frodo claims the ring, and maybe Gollum knows that it's going to lead to Sauron retrieving it, and he has to then attack Frodo to get the ring back to stop Sauron getting it. So I don't agree with it, but he's kind of filling
interesting idea
not to have Sauron get the ring back. But it's obviously all for his personal benefit. He's not thinking the bigger picture there, but it's his oaths. It's kind of twofold: the not to betray Frodo, but not to let the ring get back to Sauron. But he's still a traitor in the end.
And even, I mean, if Gollum would have not tripped, he probably would have vanished with the ring into the night, and at some point maybe it would have gotten to Sauron anyway.
He knew straight away there with when Frodo put it on and claimed it, Sauron becomes aware.
Exactly.
And I don't think Gollum would have gotten far out of there before.
Probably not.
Like Sauron's
eye was captured before without the ring.
Yeah. It was too. Sauron was completely aware of where it was in that moment, and I don't think he would let it out of his sight at that time. So the Nazgul were on their way, that kind of thing. So and they'd have been able to see Gollum anyway. So.
Good. So, now we're way off.
We're way off.
What about Isildur?
Yeah, we were with Isildur, and how Isildur, if there could be a little story with Isildur at the end struggling, having the one ring, and what is it? I think it would have been somewhat similar, but I would not expect this complexity. I mean, we discussed this little topic here for like, I don't know, 20 minutes or so, and you see just how much depth Tolkien put into it, which is, I guess, what fascinates us all in Tolkien's world. The amount of thought and depth put in so many details is just mind-blowing often, and I don't expect that degree in the show, but definitely there are sorts of Tolkien there, and they could maybe reproduce them, even though Isildur only had the ring for a very short amount of time. But
yes.
still there might
It's
be
cool. He was a ring bearer,
yeah,
so
he was a
is
ring bearer.
he? Yeah, and so everything we talked about before, right? The fall of Numenor, all that, that has nothing to do with the ring. So that that doesn't tie into the whole ring story later on. But that is then the turning point when the ring comes into the story. Yes, maybe with Nazgul showing up, rings, and the ring having dominion over their rings, blah 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 blah. The ring could play a role, but Sauron being in Numenor, that the ring doesn't play that much, or at least not that I know of. So you bring with this topic, you bring it back to the ring. And Sauron is the Lord of the Rings. He forged the bloody thing. That was his master, just like, the Silmarils were Fëanor's masterpiece, one-time masterpiece. This was, and just like Morgoth's ring, so basically marring Arda, basically, was Melkor's masterpiece. This was Sauron's masterpiece, and they need to mention this, please. So I think they will show that. If they don't show the forging of they won't make the forging of the rings a main story plot, because what happened in Numenor had nothing to not that much to do with the rings, or Galadriel being in Lothlorien building her kingdom there, or even the dwarves. That had nothing to do with the rings at that time. We're talking about Isildur's time. The ring comes in later on, so I think it would be interesting to show that, and I'm kind of convincing myself now that we will.
That's why. That's why I don't. Well, I don't really care what they call it, but it's really weird that they're called. Like, they keep talking about Lord of the Rings.
No, it won't be the name. I think it will have a I mean, but then I don't know.
Just like so much there that's
The
unrelated to
Lord
it.
of the Rings, the second. I mean, I don't know.
I think Dave Terry's asking if Sauron did have the ring in Numenor. Did use it in his corruption. Tolkien says that. And then we know that when Numenor falls, that he carries it off
Yeah.
in a dark wind, as Tolkien says. But it's not part of the downfall of Numenor story.
No.
It was just after we know that he did have it there. It's not like you say it doesn't have to become a focus of Sauron being in Numenor. We don't need to keep seeing him with the One Ring or anything like that. It's rather we see Sauron's kind of cunning and deception in action.
The deception before the forging of the rings, right? So
exactly.
this was always his how he acted. This was his war tactic.
Not a fighter. It's I'd rather see Sauron as we know Sauron in the stories. He's not a big mace wielding badass on the battlefield. He's pretty bad on the battlefield. So
he's a deceiver.
Yeah, it's words have got the power in it,
Sweet talker.
Yeah. Definitely, that's interesting.
Sexy.
That
let's not forget that.
Yeah, and that, but it is.
Sorry.
It is really interesting. I still can't get my head around that. This might not be the main plot. I mean, as we just discussed, everything started with the forging of the ring.
It's an interesting time in Numenor as well, because Tarperian, she was her, right? I always confuse that. No, it's Tarperian, yes, because Isildur was her younger brother and Tarministir was his son, so her whatever the English word for that is. So, and he was then the ruler afterwards. So that was during the time of the forging of the rings. Yeah, and Tarperian, shitty queen. If anybody's interested in the Numenorian queens, I just had a fun stream with Corey Olsen, the Tolkien professor, which was really cool.
Plug that video.
Yeah. Sorry.
Only have seen the other one yet.
Yeah. Yeah, and so that is such an important time for Numenor. She didn't want to, but then in the end they did aid the elves, but she didn't want to. She was the first ruler actually to not want to help the elves. This is a really interesting time because a bit later on, Tolkien says the shadow fall on Numenor for the first time. This is an important time, and they're not I hope they show this. I don't know.
Because you're getting most of the kings afterwards. It's the occupation and lands in Middle Earth. There's I think it's
Colonization.
Apanamir speaks against the ban, the Valar. Then you've got the King's Men, all this kind of stuff. So yeah, you're right. The Shadow is Tilperian, and then each king afterwards is kind of gradually getting worse as they go through.
And the only one is then literally Palantir, who's the last hope just before Farazon, and then when he dies, he takes his daughter with force.
It all goes to shit, as they say. That's
Yeah. Yeah, but
that's what
anyway,
Tolkien says in letter 346.
it does say it goes to shit.
Numenor, in the time of Tar Palantir, Numenor goes to shit. So.
Do you want to
Yes.
cover anything else? Is there anything we forgot to talk about? I want to see the Guild of Mariners. This is what I also want to see because they were still active in Numenor. I don't know. I mean, Isildur commands these 9 ships that leave just before the drowning. I would really like. I like these guild thingies.
Yeah.
And I think we will see that they become very important. Like Aldarion, centuries ago founded them, and I do think we will see that, and maybe this is also part of the Isildur story, because then later on because they were the greatest armada. It's like with the Spanish and the Portuguese at that time, right? They basically discovered but also ruled over the world by this armada they had, and the English later on. But I think this is a really cool topic, and I think I heard somebody saying they will also show the guild, and that will also play a part in the story. I would like that. He must be the head of that part that still is in Romena, because this is interesting because they live Isildur's house basically. So Lords of Andunia live in Romena, but then wait, isn't who tells them to leave Romena to go somewhere else where they can watch over them and spy over them? Forgot that. Where we see that? I forgot when that was. That Gimmelthor? I don't really. Do you know what I mean?
Yes, I know what you mean, but I don't remember the name.
Yeah. Because they always lived, in the Lords of Andunia lived at the other side of the island, and they dwelled there, and this was there, and they had their ports there where they left for did they go to Avalon? I didn't really remember where they went. Which harbor? Or to Kirdan, probably.
Yeah, probably to Mithlond.
Yeah. So maybe we'll see that. So the division of Numenor, and seeing, okay, this is Romena and the Lords of Andunia. Maybe they will do a house thing, like the line of Cimmerian versus the then ruling kings. That would be cool.
Try to find it on the map. I think it's here somewhere.
Basically.
But yeah, this is an interesting point. There are many interesting guilds. I mean, even the Gwais Imirdain would be very interesting to see how those are like. They forged not only the 19 rings, 20 rings of power with the one where they did only the 20s they did not forge, but also the lesser ring of power, which must be there somewhere and probably were created there. It's really interesting that those exist, and that there are many interesting connections and parallels, and enough like little hints that you maybe can expand a bit and forge interesting intrigues and stories and
Mhm.
people spying on each other and so on.
I think so.
Very-
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of potential, but
Yes.
of course,
We convinced Stephen that the show will be good because Stephen is
Well,
still
I don't
not
know,
sure.
know about that, but
yeah,
it's
we
weird.
will.
It's like I don't want to judge it. I've not seen it or anything like that, but it's weird reading a lot of people instantly hating it before we know anything really.
Yeah,
Yeah.
But I think my biggest thing is the fact that there's not a lot of dialogue in the text or anything like that. So I just keep thinking that it's all just going to be created by
yeah,
script writers, and it's not going to really feel like Tolkien at all. But that's coming from someone who's obsessively reading it. But it could be a good show. Just I don't think the Peter Jackson movies are good adaptations, but I think they're really good movies. So
Yeah.
I'd still enjoy the show. I'm hoping it's like really good to watch. It doesn't have to be 100% faithful to Tolkien to be a good show. That's my point.
yeah.
So
That would even be very difficult to do. Like, what was
Exactly,
Tolkien's
yeah.
exact visions of that we discussed the canon topic a while ago. I'm a bit also surprised that people doom this show. I mean, I can understand being skeptical. Like, you don't have really well written stories and dialogues and tons of characters, all like in Lord of the Rings with this. Just have basic outlines, what happens when, and some details, and sometimes you have to puzzle things together from some half sentences. But it's still interesting to see this to come alive. But of course, you have to have the expectation that a lot of this stuff, and that's maybe why they chose the second age, and a lot of blank pages there that they have a bit of freedom. Like it's much more difficult to write or freely in another timeline. Like if you think the last 500 years of the first age, I guess there's much less freedom there because we have so many little stories, informations about this, or the end of the third age with Lord of the Rings and so on. I mean, we have seen what the even though I like the games, Shadow of Mordor and Shadow of War did in the time between The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, and it didn't work out that well if you really look closely to the story and what is in the books. And that is just a thing that here is probably less prominent because they have a lot more space still. They could, of course, screw a few things up. I'm very curious to see what they will come up with there, but I will definitely give it a chance. And as a creator, I feel like if the show is not good, I feel like I could just looking what is in the books and what is in the show and making a comparison is maybe very interesting content to make. So in that way, I'm very, very neutral to the idea of the show being good or being bad. I don't really care, to be honest. Like I have a lot of people probably interested in what might be the differences, what might be in the books. I think we all agree on that.
Yeah.
And it gives up for interesting content. And I think my approach is always to be very neutral and fact-based and try to see, like, of course you can make things different, you can make things different, you can make mistakes, you can maybe ignore things or contradict other sources. That will most likely happen, and as long as what they do makes in the end somewhat sense, I'm personally happy with it already. I don't expect the show to be 1000% precise and getting every detail, but I think Peter Jackson sets the bar pretty high for how a Tolkien adaptation in film or in film form can look. And he also managed to make or place so many little cool details here and there in the background and some cool references. And of course, he moved things around a bit, but and changed characters a lot. Like if we think of Aragorn, he's very different. Or Gimli, some people are really mad at how Gimli is represented in the show and the book. Gimli is in its core, there are some similarities, but they're very different characters still. And that is.
But you need to understand that first of all, the audience is different. The pacing is again. I mean, I worked for TV and I produced
you know, like movies and series and whatnot. So the thing is, it's a very different approach. You like a reader of a book has a very different attention span. He wants other things than you want. So you need to change a few things. You can't.
Yeah.
I swear to you, if you would have put, for example, Tom Bombadil in the movies, it would
Yeah.
take you out of the story. It wouldn't work. So for some things, I totally get that. The pacing needs to be different and, you know, these things. So I'm actually fine. And this is why we still love the movies. They still work. And those bloody movies are 20 years old
Yeah.
almost. This is when I feel really old, by the way, people. Um,
Me too.
but it, you know, it is a different thing. And I mean, you know, when it's winter, you dress differently than you dress in summer. It's just a thing. And I'm totally fine with that. And the books will never change. And
Yeah.
whatever the series does, you know, if it's good, if it's bad, if it's okay, whatever, it won't change the books for me. And this is what I said, you know, earlier on. I would just love if more and more people, and this is, I think, to a lot of you, to Stephen, to you, Chris, people come to us and say, "Oh my God, cool! I picked up the Silmarillion because of you, or whatever, you know, because of you
Yeah.
guys, because I want to know." And this is all I want. Like, this is
Yeah.
so
That's
cool to give people to make people understand there's more out there, and this guy really lived to give us these stories, and he always thought about it. It never left him. He was, you know, still at the end of his life, he thought about changing Galadriel and stuff. Like, this is insane. Like, when I finish a project, it's mostly finished and I go to the next one. This wasn't how Tolkien thought, and this is so beautiful. And I think the series and the visual imagination and the visual world is just an extension of that, and I like it.
yeah, and I guess, as you said, the books simply don't change. If it's not a good show, then we just have
Yeah.
not a good show, and there are a lot of
Yeah.
other not good shows, and there are some good shows. Then
Yeah.
watch
Oh.
a good show instead. I don't know. Won't be the
Hobbit
end of the world.
trilogy. The Hobbit trilogy didn't change how good Hobbit is as a book. So
No, yeah,
Yeah,
exactly.
exactly.
That was not
And
Peter Jackson's fault. Like, justice for Peter. He wanted one movie. He didn't want to make it into 3 bloody movies.
he only had 6 weeks of preparation time, while for Lord of the Rings he had 2.5 years.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah. We
don't
need
blame
like a
Hobbit.
cut down. Like, have you ever seen like the Star Wars prequels with cutting out Jar Jar and certain things and the weird annoying love scenes and stuff like? There's a cut for that. So I want maybe there's one out
There
there and
is
I'm
one.
just not aware.
There is
No.
There is
Is there a
one.
Hobbit
Somebody
cut?
cut all. There's a Hobbit cut of all the 3 films. I think it's 4 hours or something. I'm not sure.
Yeah, I didn't
And
know. Is it
They
good?
cut out everything. I have not seen it, to be honest. I only have heard about this legendary thing.
I won't watch
But-
it again, but I know there's that cut exists. I think there's a couple of cuts. There was one that takes out all the funny nonsense, and you get that with a lot of these movies if they've got a
Hmm?
loud fat. Like, I don't know if you remember this, but there's Highlander 2, the unneeded sequel to Highlander.
Yeah,
Where
I
it
remember.
It turns out that they're aliens and that kind of thing. There's a famous cut of that came out where they just basically removed anything that referenced the immortals as coming from another planet. It cuts out about 40 minutes of the film, but makes it a better
Okay.
film. So
Yeah, makes sense.
I think the Hobbit cuts apparently a lot better, but I'm still not gonna sit and watch it. That's how bad it was. So
I might give this a try tonight. So I'll look. Yeah, Paul Freeborn also says just talked about that fan cut. Okay, I'll look it up. I'll find it somewhere.
Yeah, there is definitely a fan cut,
Yeah.
and
See, I didn't
people
know,
really
yeah.
like it because I think the core was not bad from the Hobbit films. It was just too much weird things in it.
Yeah.
Like, I don't know. Like, the Hobbit
Oh, yeah.
is. I have to say, the first film, for the most part, I liked, with some exceptions, but I thought,
Yeah.
okay, that might work. And then the second part and the third part just. I was remembering sitting in the cinema watching part 2, and I looked to a friend of mine, which I watched it together, and he asked me, did the guys who made this read the same book as I did? I don't remember orcs climbing on roofs.
Yeah.
I
Yeah,
call
I think
them the
I was.
Dachdecker orcs.
Oh my God.
Really fun.
Yeah, the thing is, just with like the prequels of Star Wars, I think I didn't like the CGI. I mean, now I kind of appreciate the prequels, having,
Yes.
the really, really bad sequels, and somebody like Ray, I've become a prequels appreciator. But yeah, no, I forgot what I wanted to say. Sorry, it's late.
Yeah, it's late. Maybe probably we should wrap up in a
Yeah.
moment. We have
Yeah.
some final words here at the end.
If
Or-
people in the chat, does somebody have a question? Because we kind of ignored the chat partly.
Yeah, sorry for ignoring the chat today so much. Usually I go with a lot of caution to chat and try to answer everything, but we just, when you have guests, it's you don't want to cut the flow of the decision, and I think we're all getting a bit hungry and need a break or something. But maybe we can answer a few, like a small amount of questions, like 1 or 2 or something, if somebody has something really interesting for the end.
Too much
I mean-
CGI, yeah, Ella. Yeah, this is what I wanted to say, Ella, exactly. So too much CGI in The Hobbit, that's what I didn't like.
Yeah, CGI, they looked a bit weird, even though I understand that they had to change the look a bit because The Hobbit also reads, like, when you read it, the feel of The Hobbit is kind of different to if you compare it to Lord of the Rings, if that makes sense. Like, it's more it has more fairy tale character to it, if that makes sense. So I can understand that they changed the look a little bit, but maybe they went a bit too far with it, I guess.
Yeah. Hey, people, ask your questions. It's 3 p.m. in Puerto Rico, and this is where I want to be. I want to be wherever Rob Feliciano is.
Agreed. For us, it's 9 in the evening.
Yeah.
Oh, thanks for your
Wait.
ideas.
Handmade Hobbit cuts actually saves the film. Okay, well, if it's an improvement, I'm okay with it. I'm down for that.
Yeah.
Not hard to improve that.
Happy I could give people some optimism for the series. I mean, I just would not put too much thought into it. Like, if it's not good, then it's not good. My opinion, that's simple.
Oh, Chris, they want to know Elrond 2. When is it coming?
I probably will take still a bit of time. Like, if you make
2024 is
no.
not-
I hope next month I will be done with it.
Oh my
But-
God, you're the
I mean, the
worst.
first part was 2 hours 7 minutes.
No,
But I
watched the whole thing in like four sessions, I think.
Yeah, I plan to make it in 3, maybe 4 parts. I'm not sure how much energy I have to edit the last thing. But editing a video that is 2 hours long, even my edit is
Yeah.
very basic, so I'm not like doing huge stuff. But if you have to add a lot of text and information,
Yeah, you do lots
like
of
making
text.
a 2-hour video is just takes forever. Like, you edit 8 hours or 10 hours straight, and you think, okay, I still have to edit I don't know how many minutes. It's just like the timeline is simply not moving forward fast enough.
Yeah.
It's just, and then voice recording. Can you imagine you have to read like 30 pages? It's
Good.
just-
But how do you do it in turns, right?
yeah, I had to do it
Yeah.
over several days, else I would have gotten insane. I'm not that good at delivering my lines, so I need a few tries, and I had some audio issues. It's the worst when you have a long text and then notice, oh no, I have audio issues. It's just, it's so many pop louds or whatever you call them.
Yeah.
And I had to edit them all out manually. It took forever. It was just nightmarish. I hope I can do this too. The second part probably 3 hours, 11 minutes. No. I won't go over 2 hours with a part. It's just probably below it. I just want to have this record on my channel. I have a video that's over 2 hours long. I got that. The others can be short. I mean, even editing 1 hour and 10 minutes takes a lot of time.
Yeah.
And I mean, the script of this video is 89 pages long. So what can I say? It's just
Bloody hell.
yeah,
Book.
it's a book, and it's I don't know. But the second part and the third part will be maybe the fourth part will be much more about Elrond. Well, in the first part we just discussed his ancestors mostly.
Video about Elrond will be about Elrond. I hope so.
Yeah, that's. I mean, I planned it as a 1 hour something video, and then it got longer and longer. Just was insane. I'm not sure, but it's probably the most detailed video I've ever done. So there's that. You also did covered some topics I had in my video I've seen. You also made a video about Elrond and how he accidentally became an elf and was originally planned as men and so on, or as half elven that decided to be a man and became the first king of Numenor. I covered that too in my video. Found it really interesting that we had in parallel similar thoughts or ideas that we probably worked on.
Stephen,
It was a pretty nice
I don't
topic.
remember.
People will think I'm ripping you off because this has actually happened with my next video is nameless things, and
Oh,
I wrote it all up, and I used some articles I'd written a few years ago. I written it all up, and I thought this is really good, and then I made it. Then I went after I'd finished it. I went to watch Geek Zone. I think he's one of the only other channels that's talked about the nameless things, and it's almost identical to the video I just made. I hope people don't think I've watched his video and then
yeah.
copied it. So it kind of happened with the Elrond one. Like that video came up, and I was like, "Oh, you've covered all that stuff as well." But I think if you're doing 15-hour videos about Elrond, you're probably going to mention his history. So
Yeah.
Yeah,
And the thing is, we just saw this here, right? So you say something, and then Stephen says, "Yeah, I agree. I had the same thought." We're all talking about the same source material, so that people come up with the same ideas. Surprise! Not really.
yeah.
Oh, and I think what people don't get is that we really all of us talk, and none of us, I would say nobody is everybody did an Eagles video or an Elrond, people
Yeah.
have more, the more the merrier. I always find this. I never saw this as, we call ourselves the Fellowship, and I think I speak for myself, and I think for you guys, we're all friends and like each other, and it's a fun and nice
Definitely.
community.
I'm very happy to have not a cesspool, but a really nice creator community that are all very
Yeah.
supportive.
We are. This is
so on.
true. Yeah, and
Pretty
look at
awesome.
the Star Wars. Look at the Star Wars fandom. It's so toxic. They're really channels that hate each other and do videos about what the other this is really bad. I mean, I love Star Wars. I thought about doing I might do. I think I'll cover the Mandalorian season 3 because I really love it, and maybe Boba. I'll definitely cover the Obi-Wan show, whatever it will be called. But the thing is, Star Wars is so evil and cutthroat, and I never felt that for our community. I never had everybody was welcomed, and it's growing still, and I like it's the more the merrier. Everybody has their own niche in a way. I feel I don't think any one of us is really copying anyone in style, or we all use the same bloody pictures because there's nothing else out there to use, but that's not copying.
I think there's someone asked me to do a video about something I didn't want to make. There's always another channel I would say that channel would be really good for doing that. Well, that's what you're saying. If there's a niche, it's if you picked up one of these channels out, you could say what they're good at. I think that's something that's really good about it. It's and I've never had one of the channels come to one of my videos and say you suck or something like that. So
No. And we all refer each other, we all post and comment and share, and I think this is a beautiful thing, and it's in Tolkien's teachings in a way. It is what he would have wanted us to do.
Yeah, that is very true. I mean, there's just so much encouraging things that we have to that Tolkien basically gives us in his books. Like I really always love the discussion of Frodo and Gandalf about Bilbo not killing Gollum and so on. It's just such an amazing part in the book, and I feel like when the person who wrote the books we discussing here, it would be we're doing a disservice to it, or not. In I don't know, to find a better word, honor it really, if we would I don't know, being on each other's throats. It's just that definitely should not happen. Of course, there can somebody maybe sees a certain scene like this or interprets it like this, and another person a bit differently, but you can still accept this. And of course, there is definitely room and space for interpretation here and there in the thing. Sometimes it's simply needed, especially in an adaptation, which is an interpretation that is especially needed. And it's really nice to see. And most of the people commenting under our videos and so on are, I would say, often have a good time. There's some people who are maybe a bit interesting, or bring, let's say, interesting ideas into the discussion that I don't want to hear about. But but mostly that's not a problem.
Yeah, no, that's true. Yeah.
Well,
it's always.
Sorry. I've been getting so many. I've been getting so many lately with. It was basically a live-in for like 5 months where everyone watched my videos. It was the same people every time. They're all like, "This is great," and then YouTube started pushing my last video. I was getting all these people coming in just like, "I hate the way you sound," and all this kind of stuff. And I'm like, okay.
Boy.
And then it's like, more people that come to your video, you're gonna get more nasty people, aren't you? But I think in general, most people are really like, if they're watching these kind of videos on Tolkien, they're really interested in what you're saying, and they're not just there to
shit on. But when you do show, but I see this, the more show content I do, and less, like I do first and second age mainly, the more show content, the naughtier the comments get, right? So because some people have expectations. I get that. I felt that when the whole Star Wars debacle happened. I was angry, and I was like, what the F is this now? This is not what I want, this is not my look. And you grow up with these things, and you expect certain things. And I think a lot of people feel very strongly about the show, who really love the movies and feel now they will be betrayed by Amazon or whatever, or they have an agenda behind, that might happen. And in a way, I understand it. This is what, this is escapism in a way, and you have a certain expectation, and that was, the books gave that to you, and now something changed. Like, I understand that. I'm not shitting on these people, but I can still, have another opinion of it and speak my, I have a voice and I use it, and that's fine.
I don't know where else you'd expect you to do that. If it's your YouTube channel and you're making a video, you're basically saying, this is what I think. And people disagree, they can leave a comment that's not like nasty about it, but
but some get nasty. The show people, the people that come for the show, they get nasty. I from my experience, never get nasty comments from, content. Why maybe that I'm mispronouncing this or this, but I think it's two different kinds. Probably Chris with a fake account or something.
I have 10.
No, but you know what I mean. So I think when new people come in, this will get a bit more toxic.
Well, I didn't even think about that. Like what the audience on YouTube will be like when this show actually is out. If you're going to get people saying, "Well, what is Numenor?" and they're going to go and look at your videos, and then maybe have no idea what you're talking about. But there'll be an influx of people who, like, did that not happen with the Song of Ice and Fire community, where Game of Thrones came out? They were all descending on the videos that were just talking about the books before, and it probably turned a bit nasty and with the different fan bases and all of that. So who knows what will happen?
That is definitely a weird thing. I mean, people are always very different. Like, I try to pronounce names relatively correctly on my channel,
But
then
people
people
shit on
complain.
you for that. Yeah.
Yeah, people complain, why do you roll your R so much and so on. It's just, well, Tolkien said it's pronounced like this. What can I do against it? It's
Yeah.
not my fault.
Yeah.
It's just, you can't make it right, I guess. And it's really interesting to see what some people what people see problems. Like, I never get complaints about like my editing or something. That is very interesting to me. When sometimes, especially when I, for example, do gaming videos where editing becomes a bit more prominent than just a glorified picture show, it's then sometimes I say, oh, this edit, this transition was really good. Nobody noticed it ever. It's just, but the only thing, oh, you said this wrong, or here, I don't know. It's just really, really fascinating. What triggers people? But I guess it's sometimes simply everyone has something that somehow triggers them. If you hear somebody say something and he maybe mixes up some for whatever reason, or says it wrong, pronounces it wrong, or whatever. Some people said, "Oh no, he said it wrong. I need to correct him." They have like the urge to communicate this.
I think it's to show how much they know. You know, if they've not got anything to say about your interpretation or your content, if they can pick up that you've said something wrong, they're showing that they know the material. You know, it's Isildur. That kind of it's like you should be saying it like that.
I really like the scene.
I've tried that when I was making my first video. I was like, I'm going to pronounce them all exactly like Tolkien says. And see when you're just in the middle of your normal voice and your accent, and then you just suddenly burst out with how he would say Isildur, but you're rolling your R's everywhere, and I'm like, it just sounds really weird when I was doing it. But I want to add a disclaimer saying I know how it's said, but I just don't want to record it that way. But some channels do. I'd say you're both really good at it, and
that's just because we're Germans. It's easy it's literally natural for us.
Same with Lord of the Rings, the guy called Alexander there. He's from Norway, and he's really good at it as well.
It's true. Yeah.
It's weird that you guys are getting picked up on saying things incorrectly when you are probably the best at saying them. So
they're annoyed that you roll the R, that it distracts her or whatever. Anyway, you know, you can't.
It's so interesting also because there's so much cultural language development. Like, English is just a very interesting language when it comes to how it's pronounced and how it works. And it feels very natural because we grow up with English movies and video games and so on. So, and especially songs, like you hear in the radio, like when I grew up, there were not that many German songs in the radio, but a lot of English-speaking songs. So you get like a feeling for even though, of course, we pronounce things funny sometimes as Germans, but especially me. But yeah, I don't know. But it's unusual in a sense if you compare this to many other languages, and especially if you go for, I don't know, in the northern regions of Europe and so on, it becomes really, it is very similar, like that in A is pronounced R in all those languages, but in English it's pronounced A. It's like very unusual in a way, and same with the R. Like, I think in Germany there's one thing, one place they have a very interesting dialect where the R is pronounced also like in right. That is called, I'm not sure how it's how to say it in English, but it's called Siegerländer Platt. It's a very unusual dialect in Germany, and quite fascinating. But in a lot of languages, the R is simply trilled, so rolled, or in German we have the throat R.
The thing is, where our language, you know, now I come in with, because I studied German literature, so you had a line, it's called the Benrather Linie, and that divided basically north from south. And this is where accents differ a lot, and the rolled R, like, I'm from the south. Chris is more, he's from the west, but he's from the northwest, let's say, right? You're far more north than I. So, and you're above the Benrather Linie. So that means you your R and your vocals, how you pronounce them, are very, very different from mine, actually, which is fascinating that in our little country,
Yeah.
you have that division, and this is why all these they are related because it's Anglo-Saxon to the English language. It's
Yeah.
fascinating.
It really is. We also have, I hope, a little surprise. Do we?
Hello, guys.
We have Dan here.
Yay!
I secretly transferred Dan into the call. That is Voice of Geekdom. Shoutouts to him. And
Hi, guys. How you doing?
Oh, we just wanted to leave. I was literally prepared to make dinner, Dan.
I won't
To be
keep you long.
honest-
I was chatting to Chris earlier on, and I just thought I'd pop in for a little bit and just give my reaction because I can't be bothered to make my own video about it. But,
Speak your
but yes, Isildur in the Amazon show. We got the news yesterday. My first reaction to it was just this is the first news about the show that I've been slightly concerned about, to be honest. Other news has come out and people have been complaining about silly things without even having seen it. And this news came out, and my initial reaction was, "Oh God, we're starting that late in the Second Age, and yet we're getting." I don't understand the timeline here because we've got the two trees and Finrods, and we've got random hobbits somehow, and then we're jumping to Isildur. So that's like 3 millennia of history that we're just skipping over in the Second Age. I don't understand it.
Dan, we made it make sense. We talked for 3 hours and talked some sense into it.
Well,
We
you can
did.
give me your summary later on because I'm not listening to the whole thing. But
Rude.
But yeah, this is the first news that's been. I think it's been a little bit of a concern. Although having thought about it a little bit more, maybe it'll be fine. But my reaction was, I thought we were going to see Eregion, and we were going to see. I thought that was pretty much confirmed that we were going to see Austin Ethel and Celebrimbor and so on. Helen and we've made videos about Celebrimbor and stuff, and we've been making that assumption. And now it seems that we probably won't see that, or we will, but they're going to drastically compress the timeline to the point where we're going to just ignore what Tolkien wrote, really. Or we're going to have a weird, like, Witcher-style plot where we've got different timelines going on at the same time, which just never goes well, really.
Stephen said that. Yeah.
So, yeah, a little bit concerned by it. But I read the synopsis that came out from The One Ring earlier on in the year. I read that again earlier, and that actually doesn't mention Eregion. It doesn't mention it. It mentions Lindon, but it doesn't mention Eregion. So maybe it'll be okay. But it does also say in a time of relative peace, which, the birth of Isildur was not. So I'm confused, mostly, but make it make sense for me. Make it make sense. In
5 seconds?
In 5 minutes or less, make it make sense to me.
Well, I guess the biggest thing that I thought about was that the lifespan of Isildur is like, I don't know, 240 years or something. That solves if you have like focus on one character like that, you have of course you solve the problem of having millennia and a lot of men dying in that time, and you have many events. It's relatively fleshed out. You have a bit of downfall of Numenor. You can connect a few things here. Then you have the end of the Second Age and a connection point to what people already know from Lord of the Rings. I think that was basically our short summary here. If people want to add something to this.
Is Stephen still here, by the way? He hasn't spoken yet. I haven't talked to him before, so I want to say hello.
Probably he's hungry. He's probably
hungry.
eating his
Oh,
own
sorry,
fingers at this point.
He's
pulling a Sheila. He's pulling a Ungoliant, eating himself.
Yeah.
He's devouring himself in a
dinner. So.
Yeah.
I was still here. I was just I think you were bringing up things that we've mentioned there, like it's maybe going to be like a Witcher jumping around the.
Yeah, I don't want that. I don't want that at all.
I don't know how else they'll do it except maybe condensing the timeline, which might be even worse. So
Yeah, I don't know which of those options is worse. I just want to take us back to the synopsis quickly. Amazon Studios' forthcoming series brings to screens for the very first time the heroic legends of the fabled Second Age of Middle-earth history. This epic drama is set thousands of years before the events of J.R.R. Tolkien's The Hobbit and The Lord of the Rings, and will take viewers back to an era in which great powers were forged, which implies rings. Great powers were forged, kingdoms rose to glory and fell to ruin, unlikely heroes were tested, hope hung by the finest of threads, blah, blah, blah. Greatest villain that ever flowed from Tolkien's pen. Beginning in a time of relative peace, comma, the series follows an ensemble cast of characters. So, the year 3200, I think 3209, Isildur was born. That was not a time of relative peace in any sense.
No.
So we have to see other times as well. We have to, which does worry me.
Except they just delete their synopsis.
They're talking about
screw it.
They're saying kingdoms rise and fall there. So if they're talking about relative peace and a kingdom rising, maybe it's going to start with the beginning of the Second Age. Because if it's a show about the Second Age, why not just start at the very beginning? Which relative peace in terms of biggest war ever has just ended. So it could start there. But then that's an even.
Yeah, I suppose in contrast to the War of Wrath, everything is a time of relative peace.
Yeah. I mean, I don't know. It's we discussed this at the beginning. I'm really surprised by this announcement too, but in a way, maybe they cover the story of Isildur. I don't know why they would start there. Don't ask me. And then they conclude it, and maybe then in another season or whatever, they jump back and cover another piece. Or maybe they planned, or they announced, as I don't know if it was just a joke or whatever, that the show would be about young Aragorn and in the Third Age. So maybe they just jump next to the Third Age and just say, okay, we start with Isildur, go to the Third Age, and then cover Third Age stuff, which is also interesting in it, because the Third Age is, I think, even for movie viewers, more relatable than the Second Age in a sense. So I don't know. It's just what I can imagine, but who knows? We will see. I'm surprised by it too. I agree that jumping around the timeline could do them a disservice of being very confusing then. I don't know. We will find out next year, I guess. I think when next year around this time, are they planning a weekly release?
Yeah, I think weekly. They're not dropping. Amazon is not dropping like Netflix at once, so it should be. And I think it's 8 episodes.
So
they
8
start
weeks.
mid. Yeah, so we'll be almost finished.
Almost finished when we next time at this point talk about the show again. Probably finished with it.
Yeah. Let's all meet again and then either shit on the show or like what Dan just did, you know.
No,
I'm not shitting on anything.
No.
I'm withholding judgment as usual, but this is the first news that has actually kind of slightly worried me.
Really? Yeah. And I mean, I'm I'm fangirling over, with Sauron convincing, the Gwaith Amirda and whatnot. I want to see the forging of the bloody rings. But the more we talked about Isildur's time, what all could be, like him not being able to destroy the ring. We talked about we covered a lot of topics in these 15 hours we're talking now, and I personally feel the more we talked about it and we thought about what could be shown, it's okay and it makes sense and I want to see it. Do you agree, boys?
Yeah,
Stephen is still here.
Yeah, the whole sort of span of Isildur's life, there's plenty of material there to work with. I don't disagree with that. I just think it's confusing in light of other information that we have.
It's strange, but we will see what's going on there. I'm really curious what they will come up with, to be honest, but we will see. I think there's not that much to say anymore. except any of you have like a deep point. But we are. I don't know. Steven said I really need something to eat.
Steven is dying.
And then because I'm a foolish person, just invite Dan into the call.
Yeah, no, I told you I was going to be quick, and I am. So I turned up at the end, so I wouldn't have to stay around for hours.
I hope Steven is
clever,
not angry
Dan.
with me. But yeah, maybe this wraps us up a bit. I would say. Are we agreeing on this? Or
Yes.
any last words here? Else, I would say you can maybe give yourself a shout out where people can find you. And I sadly don't have a picture, a thing of Dan edited. I hope he's okay with
that's
it.
okay. That's fine. Don't worry.
Okay.
We will post that later on. Is Steven even still here?
I'm still here, yeah.
Yeah, Steven, speak.
I don't know much else to say about Isildur, but
No,
No, just a wrap up for where do people find you? What's coming up next?
well, I think the link to my channel's in the description. It's called The Red Book, and I tend to post videos on Monday. So the next up is long for me, a video about the nameless things, and then I should have some more Morgoth and Sauron content coming up after that. But yeah, check out the channel, and yeah, hope to see you on one of the videos.
Hey, the content he stole, he wanted to say.
What? I thought other people steal from him. I thought that's how this usually works, but
No, but he stole this topic about the nameless
Oh,
things.
geez, yeah. It's in case anyone's watching the video tomorrow and you think that's really similar to Geekzone's video, it's an accident. I'm not a plagiarist, so don't copyright strike me. Not a lot to say about nameless things.
Helen
so
presses that button tomorrow.
Yeah.
No, just kidding.
happy accident. Leave it alone.
Okay, I'm Helen, the other crazy German in this chat, and yeah, my channel is the Clueless Fangirl, and I do fun first age, second age mainly stuff, and I'm partly doing show as well as of recently, and yeah, check out my channel and new videos. I'll drop next week the Elven Ring, which I'll cut in two. About the Elven Rings and the Rings of Power and the One Ring and the intention of Celebrimbor to forge those bloody rings. So yes, that's next for me.
Yeah, and I guess I'm the last one, right? Oh no, we have forgotten Dan, right?
yeah, I feel like I've hardly earned a shout out because I've been
No,
here for 10
you
minutes.
didn't. Yeah.
You
yeah,
earned it. We like you.
Ish.
I did do a 3.5 hour live stream with you before, Chris. So I do feel like I've got some
We
goodwill
all
in the
did.
bank there.
We all did.
Sorry, Dan.
My name's Dan. My channel is Voice of Geekdom. I do mainly first and second age content. I have a series on the Quenta Silmarillion and a series on the history of Numenor. I do other bits and pieces of third age stuff as and when I feel like it. And my next video will be a Halloween themed video about kind of theorizing what the nature of Tolkien's vampires might be. So I'm talking Thuring Gwethil. Not sure how you guys would pronounce that. You Germans would pronounce Thuring Gwethil, but that's how I pronounce it.
Ring with it.
Oh, goodness me.
You just wanted us to say it. Come on.
Yeah, of course, always. So that's me. So guten Abend, and thank you for having me.
Yeah, no problem. Nice that you also joined this spontaneously. Like I really asked for guests, like I don't know, an hour before I started or something. It was very spontaneously. I'm happy that it worked out. Well, I thank you all for staying this long with me. I hope you come back. I can proudly announce that we did make it under 4 hours, so we are below estimate. even though it was done as a joke, I guess. But people people streaming with me should know that, like I said at the beginning, time is like a very non-existing thing for me. Sometimes I feel that's also why I can identify with the elves a lot, I guess. But yeah,
I think
it
you
was
also
really-
don't sleep either.
Yeah. But yeah, it was a ton of fun talking with you about it, and we should definitely repeat this somewhere in the future. I hope you come back. And what's coming up on my channel next? That's a good question. Maybe I should also...
Elrond.
Yeah, the Elrond video I'm working on will be probably next month. Not sure if... Maybe I add another live stream in between. Maybe I record a new podcast episode. Basically,
People
this is a
should
podcast.
subscribe to your other channel because you now
Yeah, exactly. If
outsource
people are
the-
interested in gaming content, I now officially separated my gaming part of my channel to another separate channel. And probably find the link in the description of the video. If you like my gaming stuff, maybe check it out there. We'll slowly grow, but of course my main focus will here lore content on the main channel. But from time to time there will also be some cool stuff there. So if you're interested, maybe check that out there too. Then there is probably not much left to say. Again, thank you to my guests. Thank you for your people watching. Don't forget the YouTube things like subscribe, like, comment, whatever. I will upload the VOD soonish, I think. I make this... It will be directly available after I close the stream for people wondering, but I will take it unlisted and edit the beginning, the waiting time out of it. And yeah, that's basically... We had some technical issues at the beginning, so...
It's in Chris.
That will be edited out. But everything else stays, so you have to keep it. We'll be still over 3 hours, 3.5 hours, so don't worry about time. It will be a lot. So yeah, thank you for watching, and see you people next time, I would say. Goodbye.
Wiedersehen.
Bye.
Tschüss.
Tschüss.